like you're in a completely Here we go. Let's see. Desktop my audio is playing. Desktop audio is playing. Which hopefully people can hear us. Hello, everyone. Welcome to what we're calling Systemless Dragongrin. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and move my window around here. No, we'll leave it. Okay. Forgot how to do this. Hello, everyone. Today we are going to collaboratively tell a story in Dragongrin, and hopefully that's going to be fun. It's kind of funny because I am going to describe the quote-unquote system we're going to use, but really what you'll notice that I'm doing is I'm simply saying the unsaid things we've done all the time in role-playing games, certainly if you've played with me before. So in this game, we're going to work together to collaboratively tell a story, and where no one single one of us knows what's going on. And I'm joined here with Cassie, Kiel, and Tim. We will... in my mind, I want to say you know them, but I guess this is the part where we would do introductions. So, Cassie, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi guys, I'm Cassie. This is Sasha. She's gonna be around probably. I am James's fiance, and we've been talking a lot about this game. So I'm so excited to actually try and do a playtest and really see what happens. And yeah, glad to be here.
Awesome. How about you, Keel?
Hey, I am also stoked to be here. I'm Kiel Adam. I run, write, and play a lot of games, especially role-playing games. And yeah, I'm very excited to be testing out this system. This is way up my alley. So yeah, you can find me at runwriteplay.com or occasionally here.
Right, sometimes here, and
as a special guest.
Right, yeah, we're always having Keel on for stuff. Yeah, Tim, what about you?
I am Tim. I'm James's brother. I'm also 1/3 of Tabletop Terrors, and I'm excited to see this because, as Cassie mentioned, I've heard a lot of these concepts in conversation, so I'm excited to see how they play out. You know, that's going to be a fun way to stress test it right away. I think you put it best when you said, we're probably going to start changing stuff right away.
Yeah. We're kind of starting from nowhere and seeing where we go, right? This isn't necessarily like the rules, I imagine. It's more like this is the foundation and we're going to build on it, you know? At some point, even like kind of playing it with Cassie, just going through it, immediately I'm like, oh, I would have you roll there, you know, stuff like that. So it's just going to be kind of, using the tools we're used to with role-playing games to tell a story, and just kind of changing some of the agreements. So a good example of that is we have something, a concept we're going to call story responsibility. And it's kind of like, instead of you playing a character, imagine that you are this character's writer, and you are deciding their story. So it's not, oh, I pick the lock or I don't pick the lock. It's, well, it's my responsibility to decide that this character did or did not pick the lock based on what I think should happen. It's totally up to you. If you think that this character should always have good things happen to them, that's kind of within your power. I don't imagine most people are going to end up doing that, but I'd be curious to see what it looks like. So we talk about this idea of story responsibility, and again, within these guidelines, the GM has something we call last say. We're used to that, right? You guys can say what you think it should be, and I go, we're going to go with this, you know, as what the GM has. Now, I can also give that to other people. I can say, you know what, Tim, I want you to narrate a scene where your character does such and such. I'm going to give you last say. You can say whatever you say goes, you know? I feel like it's kind of making the game creating one level above where we're used to. And so we can say these interesting, vague narrative things, and then the creativity, the game part of it, is coming up with how that works, or how we make that work. So when we start creating a scene, basically what we're going to do is we're going to just have a conversation about who should be there. We'll use some roleplay elements to decide like what order we go in. We'll start making characters here in a minute. But in general, instead of me as the GM like setting the scene and telling you, it's more like I say, okay, you're going to be at a certain place, and then you'll ask me questions about that place, questions that you actually have, things that would be pertinent to your character, you know, as though, again, it's your job to know what you need to know to craft your story in this world. and we'll kind of only talk about that. Instead of me spewing a bunch of stuff on my players, hoping for them to remember and try to latch onto this stuff, I'll kind of leave it on them to go, hey, I'm latching onto this thing. What have you got for me there? And then the last thing I want to talk about before we get started is a concept I'm just referring to, talking in story. And I'm pronouncing that funny because to talk in story, I say it a lot as a concept encapsulated, and it gets muddy. So, but to talk in story is to describe in narrative detail what your character is doing as playing the game, right? You can say, oh, my character swings their sword. I'm like, well, okay, that's saying what your character's doing. But to talk in story is to describe how they, slowly unsheath it, thinking about their ancestors as they, strike the killing blow for the first time in 100 years with this sword. That's talking in story. It's not enough to say, I'm going to go ahead and climb the cliff. I need you to tell me where you're putting your feet, where you're putting your hands. What does it look like for you to be doing that? And what are your reactions? How are you feeling? The things we're used to doing, but instead of worrying about whether or not you're climbing, whether you rolled a 1 or a 20 or whatever, instead I'm saying, no, convince me that you are this character climbing this cliff. That's the game. So that's kind of everything we'll start with. I sent the players some little things to keep us on the same page. Everybody has a player number, so we're going to decide those first. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to make Cassie 1. Kiel is going to be number 2, and Tim, you'll be 3. It's funny, I didn't put sections for these. Well, so that's going to be your character name, but I'm going to go ahead and put your player names here because I'm going to need that. I always do, as I always do. But okay, so we are going to begin by creating characters, and when I say that, really what we're going to do is we are going to make like a sentence about somebody, and then that's going to be the player we're starting with. I've already talked to Cassie about what background she's going to be, and then it came up that Kiel wanted to be. Tim, did you have an idea of what character you wanted to play? Like picking from the backgrounds, you're muted.
I can tell I was muted, but I was like, oops. What I was going to do is, and so this is something to stress test the system. Do you have to choose before you start? Is that
no,
part of the
so
game?
we're, in a sense, we are starting, but to some degree, right now, yes, we are kind of deciding some details about your character. So in this case, you'll be saying just the background, and then what we're going to do is we're going to look at it, we're going to play a scene as you as the background, and we could change things, whatever. But so to some degree, you don't have to choose, but eventually I will say, okay, Tim, it's time to play a scene, and at that moment we will have to. But if you wanted to put it off, I just basically was taking your temperature on whether or not you also chose Missive Crow.
I did not. Okay. I did not choose. So basically, I chose one so I did choose one. So is it helpful to wait, or is it better to tell you now? I guess is what I'm saying.
It'll be better to tell me now. We're going to use that to sort of start building. I just wanted to see, like I said, there was a world in which everybody picked the same one. I just wanted to see what I did, really.
That was not this world. So it's we're in an alternate timeline where I'm a beast keeper.
Okay, perfect. So right now, and I'm just going to say things that are true, and the point of the game will be to figure out why. Right? One of the things we often struggle with in a role-playing game is, well, how do we know each other? Well, we're going to turn them around. Instead, we go, we know each other. How? Okay. We're going to make it happen. So I suppose you'll see what I mean, but we are starting in Ruby Port in Jahar. All of you have your first quest. You have to get on the boat. All of you have some reason you're getting on a boat from Ruby Port in Jahar, in Dragongrin, down, and you're going to be on your way to Zaman. Now, what we're going to do is, knowing what your quest is already, you already know this, right? We're now going to look at your characters, and we're going to talk about the reasons they would need to do that. So again, see how we're approaching it from the angle of going, no, this is already true, so let's talk about why it would be true for you, And so we are in Ruby Port. This is a city in Jahar. It's pretty busy. You've arrived here through some means, and you've already contracted to get on a specific ship with a Grimdal boat captain that you know through somebody. So we'll just go ahead and start with Cassie. I should roll, but she's player 1, so we'll just start with her.
All right.
But giving the players numbers allows me to roll, but it also allows me to pick, and that's what I'm going to do, apparently. the background you wanted, Cassie, was Missive Crow, right? And we talked a lot about what your character story was going to be. Has that changed? How much of that would you like to keep? Like, basically, what is your reason? The real question is, what is your reason for being here in Rubyport, and why are you traveling to Zaman?
We haven't talked about the reasons pertaining to this. So I talked to Kiel, and we thought about actually being 2 Missive Crows. And let me know if you're still on this, Kiel, that we're nicknamed the Ravens because we're actually a team of crows. They go together.
A duo. Yeah, I love it.
Okay, yeah.
Could be long distance missive carriers, maybe.
I really like that because something else we talked about was in the Missive Crow section of the Dragongrin, Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin book. One of the things you get as part of your equipment is an undeliverable letter. So, what I am going to do is just as a part of the game, instead of kind of the way we usually do it, I'm going to just go ahead and copy this quest, and we're going to give Cassie a second quest here. Cassie and Kiel, actually, that's the funny part. It's called the Undeliverable Letter. This letter is addressed to someone inside the Wailing Grey. So someone has died, and in Dragongrin, after what happened with the Dismembered Lord, and really people aren't exactly sure. But now when people die, they don't move on in the way they used to, and maybe, get sent to the Famists through the Old Vale, whatever people may have believed. Now, they go into a place called the Wailing Grey, and they potentially become Grey Souls. They go to another plane where they're for eternity torn apart by terrible beings, other beings just like them, and then maybe they become a being like that and are do the tearing apart themselves in a vicious cycle of undeath in Dragongrin. Well, somebody is paying the Ravens, probably one of the best pairs of Missive Crows, to get that letter there. And so that is the reason that you both are trying to get on this boat in Rubyport in Zaman. So, or Emerald Port. I'm going to get those mixed up a lot. No, Rubyport to head to Emerald Port. I had it. Doubted myself. So, but okay. So now we just know that that's true. We've laid out this story detail. You both know that. We know a little bit more about Cassie's character, and maybe we'll play a scene with both of you. But we will see first Tim, and I'm just kind of feeling this out too. I was going to play the scenes each person and then move on, but it feels more natural to kind of have set that up and now set you, Tim, up, and then maybe we'll have a scene and everybody can be in it, right? So Tim, you are a beast keeper here, and basically we want to talk about what business do you have arriving to this city in Jahar, now get on a ship that you've contracted to head to the Emerald Port in Zaman and do something there.
Yeah, so what I did was I actually used the roll tables that are related to the backgrounds. So I rolled and got the fact that I specialize in livestock. So that's my specialty. And then I rolled what would be maybe a counterintuitive roll, which is saying that if I'm specializing in livestock, the second roll that I did was break and train horses for local marrow. Now, here's the thing. I like the fact that I'm great with livestock, but I can break and train horses. I just don't like it. So I think that I'm going there because I need to break and train the horses for the marrow that are there. And I don't have a choice.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. And I love that because, and I don't know, some part of me...
Have I done enough? I excel.
I'm struggling with how much I would like to share of this because it's turning into a really good game. But that's perfect. Let me just suffice it to say that that's perfect. So, breaking horses. That's what we're going to call the quest. And so you are headed to a marrow encampment. I'm adding this for anybody in the chat. Maybe we'll go to see them soon. I'm adding it to our quest log. You're headed to a marrow encampment to help break horses.
That's awesome.
Not necessarily because you want to. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I love the fact that it's very Dragongrin to be, hey, you're going on a long trip.
Yeah, exactly. Because and as you pointed out, right, so you're this character that knows how to break horses and is potentially famous for it, but doesn't necessarily like it. but because you
Yeah.
are known for it, somebody's like, hey, no, this is what you're doing. So
Yep.
we don't really have names for your characters. What we can do is in the identity section, this would be somewhere where you would, for example, put Missive Crow. You can put and I'm just gonna go ahead. And we'll just put Beastkeeper. This is all just kind of like non-mechanical character sheet. I don't know how else to put it. These are things we need to know, and so identity is anything you want to like list in your identity, anything that you look at as the way you see the world. So at this point, you are a Beastkeeper, but maybe you're a Drogus, right? You could put a culture there. You could put anything you're sort of feeling about your character, and to some degree, in the normal game of this, we would go through and I would ask you these things, but because of the players you are and kind of what we're trying to do, we're just going to kind of freeform it, if that makes sense, and to see what emerges. But basically, think of things you would want your character to be about. I don't know how else to put that. If you had a pull string, what things what would we see? So that actually brings us to one of the next things we're going to do, which is we are going to create something called our character barks. And these are things like, the reason it's called a bark, part of the reason is it came from in video games when you click on a character a lot in like a isometric role-playing game, they say things over and over and over again, and somebody has to write what these characters say. These are this character's barks. They're like a thing that you hear from them that shows you who that character is, but it's not necessarily to anybody or as part of a conversation or anything. So, for example, if your character likes lunch a lot, a hobbit is always asking if, when are we stopping for lunch again, right? Somebody that's looking for their long-lost brother, or the better example is in Lost, Walt is looking for his son. What does everybody know? Well, not Walt. He's looking for his son, Walt. I think Michael is.
Where's Walt?
And he's just always saying Walt, right? Like, those are character barks. So what I'd love to do is I'd love to almost flash back to a time in your character's life. And it's going to sort of a scene. It could be short. It could be you taking a drink, talking to a stranger at the bar, whatever. It's going to culminate in you saying this thing. And this thing just kind of tells a story, and we're just going to try this out. Kiel, if you're okay with it, we're going to start with you. Again, I can roll for who, but I'm into putting people on the spot right now.
Yeah, good.
So your character is a Missive Crow.
Mm-hmm.
You are somewhere in Dragongrin. It doesn't matter where. It could be Zaman, it could be Jahar, where you are now, but somewhere. And something is happening to your character. Now, we want to talk about, all we know about you so far is that you're a Missive Crow. Have you decided any other details about your character? Is there anything else you'd like to see happen, or?
I added a couple more identities, just Traveler.
Oh, okay, let's take a look, yeah.
Traveler and loyal to the dismembered lord.
Okay. I'm really loving that.
Salty boy.
That's really cool. So then what we want to do is we want to do a scene worth showing to some degree of your character, and really we're just going to take everything you've given us. I want to see that you're loyal to the dismembered lord. I want to see that you've traveled, or that you will be traveling, right? And maybe... Okay, what we're going to do then is we are going to play a quick scene where somebody is giving you a missive to be delivered. It might be the one that you're delivering, or it might not be. And you have to think of this character bark. There's something you're going to say, right? So I'm going to sort of set you up, and then and I'm crafting this as I go, but I'm basically going to be the NPC giving you this mission. And you're going to show me that you're a traveler that is loyal to this dismembered lord. I don't know. I don't know how else to say it. I guess I want to tell you more, but that's it. So you find yourself, Kiel, at the top of a great tower in Grin. And the journey here was ridiculous. The amount of times that your head was covered and your senses dulled by arcane magics and the portals that you went through. You can still kind of feel it in your bones a little bit. You definitely didn't linearly travel here. And you're in a dark room, and there are torches, on some of the walls, but there's somebody sitting in a throne, and they say, "Approach." And they reach out, sort of a skeletal hand hands you a... I have to decide what I want to do as the GM here. It hands you a red scroll that is magically bound. This is a very special type of missive. And And though a missive crow would know what it is, you guys don't know what it is yet, and I'm hiding that from you. But you're given this very special missive. Something that you do recognize that is famous. Like, oh, that one of those missives, right? And so then the skeletal, what is only a skeletal hand so far, says, "You have been chosen, and you understand why. It is your time to go. You will meet them at the Emerald Port in Zaman."
I think as he takes the red scroll, his gaze lingers on this skeletal hand, sort of protruding from the shadows, the shadowy throne, for a few long seconds before he actually looks at the scroll that he's now holding, as he sort of realizes he's holding it, in this kind of surreal moment. And I mean, I suppose, like you said, it could be short. Whatever he says
basically,
now could be the bark.
Basically, you could say something, and that would be the end of the scene. Yeah, like, this is just you. This is just like, we're gonna meet you again, and you're gonna look different. When we have this next scene, and that's all. Yeah. So basically, yeah, I expect you could say the bark now. That would end the scene, and that would be it. And now we just know something extra about you.
I would just say, well, by his scars, it will not deliver itself.
And yes, the scene ends, and you find yourself now again. You're walking around Jahar, and everybody knows that the look on your face. They understand more now that it's that red letter sitting in your pack as you walk. Ready to climb on board of this ship. And you actually have to meet somebody. You're here to meet another missive crow, and they're going to, you're supposed to deliver the letter in tandem. This is kind of an uncommon thing, but as you pointed out, you're both. Go ahead, Cassie. Yeah.
Kiel, what's your character name? We never determined that. Do you have a character name?
Good question.
Yeah, right. I guess that sort of thing, when it comes up, will come up, and then it's the time to figure it out, right? So, and I love that you're going to that part of the book to fit. In a perfect world, you would be able to click a button and see what your character's name should be. Exactly what you're doing is looking up in the cultures and stuff. So that's really cool.
I have to ask, because I just wanted to actually jump into a scene, if that's okay.
Because I wanted to know the name of the person I'm going to murder.
Right?
Yeah. No, so yes, one scene, I will say yes. And let me say this. In the game, I imagine there being these moments where we're kind of trying to decide things a little differently than most games. So, Cassie, definitely consider what scene you would like it to be. I was going to address the chat a little bit. But I definitely want to, especially after something Matt Click said to me when we were talking about this idea, I really want to make sure that we build in the ability for players to not feel pressure to have to come up with something quickly. The point is to come up with the coolest thing, not necessarily to come up with the quickest thing. And we're going to, cut a fine line, but if you need to open the book and figure something out to get that coolest thing, I think that's okay. Welcome, everybody that is joining us in the chat. It's a lot of things going on. A lot of, I really like
There's
to see
a lot of horseplay going on.
That's what's funny.
Horse
a lot
hockey.
of things happening that I'm sure had a lot more to do. Yeah, Walt is the best example of a character barker. Absolutely. Pretty neutral on horse racing. I thought that said neural each time.
Lover, well, first it's Tim, breaker of horses, hater of breaking horses, followed by lover of horseplay. That was Helmage, Matthew. And then Barker said, lover of horseplay, pretty neutral on horse racing.
Oh, man.
I was tempted to use that as my bark, but I'm not going to.
Oh, yeah.
It's just so meta. It's a bark by barks. So.
Barks. So somebody did ask a question, and I would like to address it. But I know I'm keeping you guys on the edge of your seat here for this scene. Random question here: what advice would you give a player on the shy side? I'm like 3 rounds in and feel like all I contribute is the same thing, really, just choosing what power to pick from when fighting, or what power to pick when fighting. So here's what's really cool. This is kind of a random question, but it's very poignant and important because I am trying to craft a game here a little bit where players that generally feel that they're shy get a chance to, as a part of the game, be in the spotlight rather than... And I say this because I'm like, this isn't most people's experience, but it is some people's experience. Instead of being in that situation where they don't understand how to get the spotlight on them because it's not something they're used to, I want that person to also be able to play the game. So my advice to you is to think of the coolest things you can and say them when it's your turn, and players will always want you to talk. So, like, for your random question, like, yeah, just think of cool things in the world. Think of a cool way that you use your ability. Think of... That's the fun of the game for me, is that creativity. So, as far as getting over shyness, I don't really have many tips, but I like to think that saying cool things will endear people more to you, and that will help you be less shy in the future. Yes, Cassie, you had...
I raise a finger. I was thinking also in regards to that question, when you're 3 rounds in and just choosing what power to pick when fighting, James and I actually watched Shanghai Noon recently.
Yes. Yeah.
And what's cool is, like, yeah, you could pick that power and still do that thing, but watching some of the choreography and how they integrated the environment into that power in a way, like, even look at that for inspiration and try and make those boring rounds. Like, see if you can bounce your magic missile off of something and see if then you can get it in the back. I don't know. Yeah.
And that sort of thinking is what I like to think this style of game will promote. And what's interesting is eventually I would like to build this up enough that we can build mechanics on it and we can still have powers and mechanics, but that you still feel like you're a person with magic, not a person constrained by the system. So with all of that said, thank you. Kiel, what is your character's name?
Character's name is Paid Shadelaw. Sorry, Pain Shadelaw.
Pain
Shadelaw. I love it. And the characters, they're just adding things to their character sheets. That's kind of what I was hoping would happen. It's great. So, Cassie, knowing that, you wanted to have a scene. You guys are probably in Jahar, right?
Yes.
You meant to meet up. I didn't know what your plan for that scene was.
It was a introduction scene. And my character, her first name is just going to be Saldina. I'm going to stick with it. I don't know the last name right now. But Saldina and Pain know each other. And it's been a while since the Ravens have met up. It's been a while since we've been called to go together. I've been ordered to, come out here and keep an eye on you. So I was told. But I see you walking down to the port. You're on your way to the boat. And Saldina just raises her hand and she's like, Pain, Pain, Pain. All eyes are on you with that red letter. And she comes walking down towards him because that red notice is just so out there, as our DM pointed out.
So I said that it was in his bag, but here's the thing. It is within the spirit of the game to say that if you said that thing is hanging out and it's obvious, it is. Maybe it's not something other people recognize. No. Don't be sorry. That's what I mean. I'm like,
okay.
but I only want to clarify that I didn't say that, but that it's perfect that what you said is what it is now. Because it is sticking out and you do call it out and it's probably making Pain very uncomfortable. Please continue.
Yeah, the description earlier I thought made it kind of obvious that he was carrying something important. So that's what's going on.
Yeah.
But anyways, and she slides up to him and she's like, man, no wonder I was told to come keep an eye on you. Why do you have this thing just sticking out there? And she reaches and like tries to cover it with the leather satchel, like it folded over and missed his letter or something. It was just sticking out. It's sticking out.
Yeah.
and
so with a flourish of his cloak, Pain sort of, I think as he was walking, and he heard your well, or pain, he did that sort of thing where the camera sort of showed him sort of stopping, like rolling his eyes. And then like puts that forced smile on as he sort of turns. It's funny that I was summoned and given this charge, is it not?
Saldina kind of squints her eyes a little bit and purses her lips a little. That she doesn't like that. True, but I was still here to keep an eye on you. It must be quite important. Right? What is it? We're going to Zaman, isn't it? You know, it's been such a long time since I've seen you. And she just tosses her rich black hair back over her shoulder, puts her arm and claps him on the back, and kind of motions back towards the boat. It's like we're almost done getting packed. Did you need anything else while we're waiting?
Everything I own is, as he sort of gestures to the boat, and then is right here in my satchel.
And so I wanted to ask a question. Do you suppose that you said Saldana, Cassie?
Saldina.
Saldina. I immediately overwrote that with somebody else. Saldina. Do you suppose that Saldina is aware that Pain is loyal to the Dismembered Lord? I would say I don't think so.
No?
Well, how do you feel? How does Saldina feel about that? Is she also loyal? Because there's being loyal to this Dismembered Lord, and there's living in Dragongrin, and those things are not equal, right? So I'm just saying, how do we feel? What is the dynamic here?
Saldina is loyal to Crows. She likes that job, and she is about getting it done. She doesn't necessarily care who it's for.
But okay, so, and I just want to make it clear. So I think what we're saying is that Pain is on a secret mission. Saldina is here and is a tool being used on that mission, but is not necessarily now. But that's the thing. The characters we have do not know this. Does that make sense? Where like basically we're going to continue potentially, and we don't know where that will lead. But you guys don't have to be friends. You will sort of find yourself in the same places on the same mission. But we did watch Red Notice recently, and the character it's two characters that don't get along the whole time, constantly together. You know what I mean? And I'm like, it's okay if that is the case. By not getting along and knowing you're staying together, you can kind of bicker the whole time, and it's not that bad, if that makes sense. So your dynamic does not have to be that, but I think it will be very interesting to the story if you're not necessarily on the level with each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So how does that feel,
Not practiced in bickering, but I'd like a little rivalry. Like,
let's put it another way.
Yeah.
We didn't talk
like
about this yet. Yeah, we didn't talk about some things yet. I wanted to go over some social contract stuff. I wanted to talk about character death. Your character will probably die. I just wanted to say. The thing is, there are no mechanics, right? And you will have some control over how and when and why it happens, but it's a part of this game. I just wanted to bring that up because...
That's huge, yeah.
and exactly. As well as the idea is that I want you to know between each other... I guess the point is I want there to be expectations that this is not necessarily going to be a fun story. I don't know how else to put it. It's going to be a story in Dragongrin, right?
Like a stock
friendly jaunt.
It's a friendly jaunt. No, it's not going to be a stock RPG in which you're expected to succeed more than you're expected to fail generally.
Yeah, exactly. Like
success is almost guaranteed in most RPGs unless the social contract is like, hey, you're probably going to die. Whereas in this, you're kind of flipping that switch and saying, good luck surviving.
Yeah, to some degree. And in a sense, it's almost like, yes, how long could you survive in Dragongrin?
Sure.
Given,
I love
given
it.
The circumstances.
I love it.
So.
I absolutely love it.
The
other thing I was just going to say quickly about the rivalry thing, too, is that is the premise for most good television shows, is that they purposefully put, and I watched this really great interview with two famous sitcom showrunners who were like, they made some really famous shows, and they're always like, the feedback they were giving was, there's not enough conflict between the two main characters.
Yeah.
We need a reason for them to be at each other all the time, even if it's humorous.
Right, exactly. And in so many role-playing games, you lose that because to express that sort of sentiment to another player in the game it's difficult to keep that dynamic up because at some point the other player might feel like it's real. You know what I mean? Like, but to some degree, there's with that as well as with success and failure. As far as there's a world in which your characters do things very poorly and still continue to succeed. It's somewhat more interesting, potentially, where it's like, oh, wow, how did they do that? But if you watch any movie or television show, they are always succeeding, not necessarily at what they tried to do, but at something, and something else is happening. So, yeah.
That's great.
But okay, so Saldina and Payne are talking in Zaman. They're getting ready to get on the ship. And
Jahar, right? We're starting
in Jahar. Yes, I'm sorry. We're in Jahar. Whatever I said, don't listen to the GM. He doesn't know. So Tim, your character, like you said, you are on a mission to get on this ship, and you basically are going, and you've been, I don't know what, conscripted to go break horses. But what happens is, as you're all climbing on the ship, potentially getting ready, Tim, you might be helping, aiding as well in the transport of some sort of beasts. We want to think about like what would be in the hold of this ship. It's a relatively large ship. There's a place you'll be, but like you might be in charge of a few things. You know what I mean? Maybe you're making a little extra money, whatever. But does that make sense? There's like a few cages on the ship, and maybe there's like some regular livestock or something that you're keeping alive down there on the trip.
That sounds great. It's probably my fare, is what I would guess.
Okay, yeah.
I don't think that anyone in the Dismembered Legion or whoever is making me do this for the Marrow would say, and here's a per diem.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like
they'd say, make it happen.
Find a way.
Correct, and I think that that's so Dragongrin, and so I feel like the way that I would be paying my way is, hey, I'll shovel, these, this dung, and keep these animals clean and fed for the duration of the trip.
Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to say that there is, just for narrative effect, we're going to say that there is also one creature that is in a box that is like closed. There's like a few, there's like some livestock, regular sheep, whatever, a cow, and then there's one that's like, it's got the Wayland Yutani logo on it. You know what I mean? That kind of box. Like,
dude, that's fantastic. Okay. So I love when Chris Perkins does this as a game master. He takes a joke that the player says and he actually like incorporates it and says, yeah. It would actually be really cool if it was perhaps some sort of like Zarfin symbol.
Okay, yes, like from an Annulus directive. So actually, that's a good point.
Right, where it'd be like,
It is the oh man. So I have an Annulus directive that you are going to. Okay, what you know of this symbol, if anybody else were to see it is a specific alchemical Annulus directive. That's their whole thing is alchemy and transmutation of elements. And so this is probably a creature that is either an amalgamation of other creatures or, you know what I mean? Like maybe maybe it secretes some special thing that you need for alchemy, right? So, but yes, it is super under wraps. You're not supposed to talk about it, but part of your fare is getting it. And you ended up talking to the captain, whose name is Akule Doom, is a Grimdal boat captain. He's honest and agreeable. But as you are kind of settling in, you've gone to your bunks, you're getting everything ready. Suddenly you hear a commotion out on the docks. And going above deck, you just see that suddenly there are so many more people on the docks. Like, there's just no more room for people. If the wrong thing were to happen, some of these people would start falling into the water. You know what I mean? Like, they are just... Everybody suddenly is like rushing to get onto a ship. Now, you guys are on a ship right now and kind of have your spots, but for some reason, everybody's leaving. Just suddenly, like in a frenzy, people are leaving. So, basically, Tim, you see this happening. You see everybody rushing. What do you suppose would have caused this? What do you think is causing so many people to suddenly try to rush to ships?
So, can I ask?
Yes, in terms of any questions. Yeah.
Okay. How secretive is it? What's in the crate? Do I know? And is that something that in this game the players would have meta knowledge of since we're in the writer's room, or is it something that we're choosing to decide later, or not deciding either way and seeing if it comes up again?
We are choosing to decide later. I have an idea for it. If it comes up separately, like if you have something you want for it, please feel free to use it. But like, yes, the idea is
but it's a Chekhov's gun kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it. Perfect.
Exactly. Literally just for fun.
Yeah, I think that is a missing ingredient in many games, is that we often think we have to come up with something for everything right on the spot. So kind of in the same spirit of what you're saying before. So, for me, okay, I think the reason why people would be leaving the ship is maybe that there was a sighting of an Arcseer's mount flying overhead.
Okay. Yeah.
So that usually means like, hey, you know what? I'm just gonna get out of here. It looks like there's gonna be trouble.
Something's going on. Yeah.
Something worth saying. You know what? This is maybe nothing, and it's probably not gonna be me, but it might be me.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You never know.
You never know. You never know.
That's great.
So maybe just that like sigil scar, just like maybe made a circle close enough that we were able to see it and hear it, not in the distance.
and to put it another way, I would say that for a while there have been rumors of something going on in the area, like you said, an Arcseer. And so now to see somebody flying directly over the Ruby port in Jahar is like, oh.
Yeah, and so to be explicit, just the mount.
Oh, just the mount. So okay.
Just the mount. So, which makes it more terrifying.
Yeah.
In my opinion, because the Arcseers can see through their sigil scarred's eyes with their helms. So they often send them to patrol. So that Arcseer could be walking the deck, which is, I think, the reason why people are like, yeah, they could be anywhere.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I imagine that instead of like this surge of sort of, like panicked rushing to boats, I imagine it's more like, suddenly everybody has important business on the boats.
Yeah.
Love that.
Because you don't want to, you
at least
exactly, you're not trying to look conspicuous.
At least lean on a broom.
Yeah, right.
So my dad always taught me, if you're gonna take a break, at least lean on a shovel.
So I think that's perfect. So then I think what is going to happen is I think that there's going to be a scene where, for some reason, right, this is where we talk about the narrative element of the game. The three of you go to talk to the captain about this at the same time. And so we're going to have a scene with all of you probably on the poop deck, which I use that term because it's just the highest deck on a ship, right? So you're going to go see the captain on the highest deck, where you can see everything. Actually, let's say this. So we're gonna talk in story. So you mentioned the Arcseer's mount is flying overhead. Zaldina and Payne we're talking. Tim, you were below decks doing some stuff. You came up. You see the surge of people, and the mount gets closer and closer, and it lands on the mast of the ship next to the one you're on. And I mean, it's it's kind of looking at everybody, but everybody feels like it's looking at them, so it's looking at you and it's looking at you. Yeah.
Could you describe what this looks like?
Yes. So
what does that creature looks like?
So the Arcseers have mounts. Oh man, it's in here.
So
I
it's
don't know where.
yep. So it's yep.
Tim,
so it's going to be.
Describe that to me.
No, I can just show you. I can give you the page number.
That's even better. I have the book. Yeah.
Yep. So if you flip to page 430, we'll show an Arcseer on top of a sigil scarred.
Try and describe it in story, James.
Okay, so no, that's fair. So I'm going to show you the picture, and then I will describe it.
Okay.
Oof.
So
right.
it's a bit dark in here, but you can see, yeah. But it's like,
Holy
So,
yeah, it's a serious business.
and actually, so that brings up a good point. What we'll say is what I will do is I will say again what I said. Now having a better idea, a beast. All leathery wings and gnarled horns, flies in the sky above. This is absolutely the cause of the sudden surge in everybody having something to do. The bustle that you see on the docks. Yeah, Tim?
So we're allowed to say things that are true, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that at some point in my career, I was somehow involved with one of these, some way. Whether I had to take care of it for a short amount of time, had to rear it, had to birth it, so this is like, I'm nauseous.
Okay, yes, and so
it's just disgusting to me.
You have a particular knowledge about this, and so that's a good point. This it lands on the mast next to you, and it's it doesn't have any eyes. Instead of a face, it carries a large rune that glows, and it kind of shifts as it looks around, as though it were eyes. But you can tell that this is part of the way that the Arcseer looks through it. And nobody's really sure. I mean, it could probably see into the holds of all of these boats. It could see if you were hiding a knife 100 yards away. It can see any weapon anybody's got, and weapons are illegal in Dragongrin. And so it's scanning all the ships, and it stops for a moment on the one you guys are in, staring, I don't know, Arcseer mount daggers into the Zarfin Annulus Directive crate.
Oh.
And then, so now, so it in a flurry of wings, very slowly, 1, 2, 3, kind of blowing, it flies and sort of disappears off into the distance, or lands somewhere. You've lost sight of it. So we're now going to have a scene with the captain. Well, actually, I guess what would you? I said we were going to have a scene, but really what we would do is we would decide what the next scene we want to have is. It's okay if the next scene is us on the water, right? That happened, and that's crazy, and we don't know why it happened, but we're going to find out later. We don't need to worry about why. So is there anything else you want to do or see here in Jahar? We haven't seen much of you, Tim, I know, but I think we're going to get to
that's
that
fine.
soon.
No.
Well, exactly.
Fine.
I just want to
That's
say,
fine.
yeah. So basically, is there anything else you guys want to do, or are we getting on this boat and you're ready to urge the captain to leave this place and get on to the Emerald Port here?
I feel that the captain probably wants to leave, as fast as anybody else. So Saldina's not going to get in that way. Not going to.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. He's ready. He's calling all aboard. You know what I mean? He's making sure that everybody's on the ship here. This thing's leaving. I mean, there's not much time probably to do anything else. So in that case, I'll say that you kick off. There's a very well-traveled route between here and the Emerald Port. 2 famous ports in Dragongrin. Still can very much be a bumpy ride. You all have your own bunks, and there's a below decks where the livestock is, Tim, that you'll go occasionally. There's a kitchen, a place where they serve the food. This isn't a really long trip, but I mean, it's probably a week. So, I mean, you're living on this ship with these other people. And so a few days pass on the ship, and then one night, I'll roll for it this time. One of you is asleep, and so it looks like it's going to be Kiel. So, Payne, you are asleep on, in the hold of a ship, I imagine in a hammock, in your bunk. I don't know why there aren't mattresses on ships, but for some reason they're always in hammocks. I think it's just the easy way to sleep, right? And you hear something. You're barely awake. It's storming outside, and you hear somebody in your bunk. I call it a bunk. Really, it's like a closet with a hammock in it, right? But your door opened and closed, and there's no light in the room, and you can feel another presence in the room with you. How does this make you feel, right? This is probably a common situation for you. You deliver letters for a living that are very dangerous, and people try to kill you all the time. That's probably what this person's trying to do. What do you think? What's your plan for this situation? Where's your hidden weapon? You know what I mean? Can you walk me through that?
So as Payne sort of wakes up and stirs and has that feeling of another presence, he pretends that he's still asleep and sort of stretches and rolls over a bit, and slips his hand beneath the pillow is generous. I assume it's like, probably his satchel actually.
Oh yeah.
Where his dagger, his concealed weapon, is kept.
And so I imagine then that you probably like roll out of the hammock and like grab whoever this is and get them in like a headlock, or right, like.
No, he's being a bit more nonchalant about it.
Okay,
He's being more. That's right. Sorry, I forgot it was a hammock. I was describing it as if, but I think he would be a bit more nonchalant about it and sort of shift so that he has his hand, while pretending to still be asleep, has his hand on the hilt of his dagger, and then says, by his scars. Leave now or die.
And you hear a dagger resheath in the darkness. And a question. By his scars? And it's he says it as though it's a code. Like, you recognize it to be like, he's like, wait a minute, are you who you really say you are? And then it may be silence, right? Maybe you nod, maybe, but then the door opens and closes again. And remember, you're on this ship with all of these different people. You don't really know. I mean, it could have been anyone, but it sounds like somebody was there to kill you, and then maybe somebody wasn't truthful with them about who you were and what the job was. So in that case, it's the next day. You guys are all eating, actually. And so Payne and the alarm for the cat's food is going off. But Payne, you guys would all be eating whatever slop they were serving. What do you think it is? I was imagining some sort of andouille sausage stew, a little too watery, probably cooked in salt water, right? So you're on the water. So they're scooping up a big pot of water right out of the sea and boiling some stuff in it, maybe some crustaceans as well, just whatever they could find.
Ooh, yeah, like a gumbo.
Yeah, exactly.
The
thing is, you guys are kind of eating the broth of the gumbo, right? All this stuff got picked out, and by the time it got to you, there's like some skins and maybe some like, some. Yeah, basically just boiled seawater, like fish broth. You know what I mean? You got like this boiled seawater fish broth soup going on. It was really good for some of the people, but maybe one of you would have gotten some of the better stuff. But really, like, as non-crew, you get the dregs of the dregs,
Ooh.
But so you're all eating, and what I'd like to do is just have a scene where you're all talking, right? And we need to now engineer this because you don't really have anything to say to each other. But what would you say? It depends on what types of characters you are. Sometimes in a game, Cassie's character seems pretty, I don't know how else to describe it, but sassy, the way she was talking to Payne, Maybe you would sit in silence eating. I don't know. You know what I mean? But basically, either way, you're all kind of crammed together in a small area. And it's raining again. Hopefully not a bleak storm, just a regular rainstorm. But the rain is hitting the, outside of the ship while you're in there eating this, I don't know, warmish fish stew. What are you guys thinking? What's going through your minds? Because I forgot that's really what the game is about. Is how are you feeling right now? How wet are your socks? Tell me what it's like to be you. Let's hear. Let's go with Tim. Let's go with your character who now has a name and we still haven't said it.
Yes. So, I think actually that's probably one of my barks also. So I would imagine that one of the other characters would probably ask my name. And so, Kiel, is your character Crucian?
Yes.
Okay. You would notice that mine is too, but is downplaying it.
Mm.
And so perhaps you would ask me what my last name is. And I would say, Brooks. Just Brooks. Which is very uncommon. It's very uncommon for a Crucian not to be proud of their last name or their house.
And I realized we didn't really do character connections. We kind of were just like feeling this out playing. I think that's okay. But so that's perfect. That's part of why we ended up foregoing them. You found one. But of course, that is what you would talk about, right? So Kiel, finding out that there's another Crucian, knowing everything you know, especially about how backstabby and cutthroat it is, maybe you think that the reason he's not forthcoming is because he doesn't want you to know who he is, right? It's an advantage thing. Or maybe it's something else. What do you think?
Man without a house, he says, as he takes another scoop of the stew. in that Crucian way, trying to, like you said, James, it could be that he's trying to downplay it, but in that sort of, social maneuvering way that the Crucians do, Payne sort of tries to shine a light on that and what is it like? Look down on you, I guess, trying to play it that way.
Yeah, like a
or trying to position it that you must have something to hide, or exactly.
Like
putting you on the back foot, putting you on the back foot, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, which makes sense. And I think that the last thing that Brooks was expecting on this trip was another Crucian, because they would probably more likely be traveling first class or taking their own boat, or so it's kind of like, oh no. But I think that it would be trying to play it as more like a man whose house doesn't want the mission to be known. Sort of like, we've all been there. When we do shady stuff, sometimes you don't want to sign your name to it.
Yeah.
Seeing if that kind of connects, if there's like a shared experience there, maybe.
I think you probably see a flash of that sort of relatability there in Payne's face, but he quickly sort of stifles it and keeps trying to turn it back on you, I guess, and sort of
fair.
Says like actually maybe even more so he'll say like as if he's changing the subject, but he's clearly not. He's just trying to sort of twist, needle you even more. He's like some interesting cargo down below, he says as he takes another scoop.
And I would try to basically, in a move that wouldn't be associated with the typical Crucian, sort of try to give you the game point. Like, right? Like if back and forth, if Crucian are talking, I almost imagine it being like this chess match of like who can out-smarm or out passive aggressive the other.
Yeah.
And I want to sort of make a comment that's essentially, you are of a higher house and stature than me, telegraphed through some sort of phrase. Like, you win, and then I would also tell you the house that I'm in, which would be House Grimwall.
Okay, and so what I would love to do then is to really talk about how does a Crucian do that. Now, the way I imagine a Crucian does it, we don't have to come up with it exactly, and I'd love to know what you guys think. I imagine you kind of tell a story, like a parable, like a Scorpion and the, you know what I mean? But in a sense, there's this code within it to kind of support this intriguey undercurrent that the Crucian have. It's like a form of doublespeak they share, and you engage in it, basically, in order to get this point across to him. Where, like you said, you're kind of like, it's almost like high society sparring. But in a sense, what you did is you said, hey, I know we're sparring, but I'm letting you win. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know, like, so I like that idea that you, tell stories of maybe loved ones or something. All of these things that to onlookers sound like real things, real events that happened or times you shared, but they're really like stings and barbs in the Crucian sort of tongue.
Yeah, I love that.
How do you enable that for the players then? Should you have a roll table? Or maybe even like an example dialogue, because that's definitely a hard thing to come up with on the spot, I think.
Can I tell you my hack for that? And I don't know if this is in the spirit of the game. Do what I just did. I explained to you what I was trying to do and how I would do it, and we left it abstracted. If I choose to role play one at any moment, I can, if one really pops up. But I just said, here's what I'm trying to communicate. And I do that in a gesture of words. I don't have to role play it, right? I just say, hey, I'm really clever. I say something really clever. And that's the beauty of role-playing games, is that you can just say that it's clever and everyone just imagines it clever.
Now,
So I don't know if that works for your game, James, but that is my hack for role-playing.
well, and that's the thing. It works because, and Barker brought this up. He says James sort of did it by asking the question. I understand where you're coming from, Cassie. I was curious to learn more about that. Now, here's what's fun. Tim introduced it by saying, oh, I do this, right? He used the hack. But by establishing it as a thing they do, if the players decide to later, they might come up with a really good one.
Exactly.
And then if they use it then and they do a real one, it will be the coolest moment. So basically, I see what you mean where you're like, it is hard to come up with on the spot. So we say, don't worry about it. Use the hack. But when you've got one cocked and ready, it's like nothing else. You know what I mean? So
and to take it a level deeper, now that James defined it more, I can then say, oh, I'm going to use and we could come up with a working title that we all understand, which would be like a barb parable.
Yeah,
or like a double-edged parable or something where it's like,
we would create the concept,
Correct. And like you're saying, and this is something really cool, in a session later, when there's a really cool character moment or someone dies, I could take the time to say one that lasts 3 minutes and people will come to tears because we planted the concept this early that it has weight when it comes back.
Exactly. It's kind of like it's that exact concept. There are a lot of
That's why
reasons.
I love role-playing games. It's you can just say, and I do something really smart.
And what's funny is every movie and television show is written that way, but then the implementation, what they're graded on is how well they give me that impression. Okay, I do this really cool thing where the characters, go back and forth with this barb parable, and then you write really cheesy, stupid ones, right? And I'm like, well, suddenly you have a bad movie. What's funny is what it actually is doesn't matter because we are all kind of imagining it as cool as possible. So, yes, my hope with
Great thing about this medium, and especially a game like this where it is has that kind of writer's room edge to it, where we can just leave it implied or abstracted. We don't have to take that next step of figuring out the exact best, wittiest joke that makes the whole bar crack up with laughter. We can just say, like Barker says in the chat, I just tell a funny joke that makes the whole bar crack up with laughter. And
exactly.
then if someone has a suggestion or whatever, then we go with it. Otherwise, it works just as well. Yeah.
And I
and to take
go ahead.
I was just going to take that a step further. I have in game before even abstracted upon the abstraction to find what it is. So I'll give you an example. Barker that was the perfect example. Hey, I tell a funny joke that makes the whole bar crack up in laughter. In the next scene, I could be like, hey, I understood that joke was actually a reference to my hometown, and I don't think it was too funny. Now, we still haven't defined the joke, but now it's this kind of interesting thing where anyone can say something about the joke because it doesn't truly exist. And as long as it doesn't negate something that someone else has said, it is now this interesting joke that no one has ever heard, but everyone's familiar with.
Exactly. And so in this game, that's my goal is to, when you say something like that, to take it the step further where we at least decide what it would be about. Because you're right, that's usually how we do it. In this game, what I want to see happen is you say, I tell a joke and the whole bar laughs, and I said, okay, the question I ask then is, what joke would be funny to this bar? Right? What would you have had to have said? To some degree, prove it to me. Where it has to be something. And so instead of trying to come up with a funny joke, what we're able to do is we come up with something that thematically makes sense and is funny. Because if this is a bar of a very specific type of person, they're going to laugh at a specific type of joke. And so to some degree, there's only a small subset of jokes it could be.
Can I have a treat?
And then the bar just erupts in laughter. And right, so now we know that the punchline of the joke is, Daddy, can I have a treat?
That's it. Yeah, right? And no, the real punchline is, nope. No, I'm just kidding.
Wait for your dinner.
No, I'm just making a joke on stream. But what I was going to say, too, is that, James, that's really clever because you could say, as an example, in this place, depending on where you are, if you're in a Crucian-heavy bar, it would be about the Holyfic Church or the Ardor. And it would be a surefire, it would be the equivalent of a racy joke. But if you said something like that in Innis, you'd get stabbed in the back with an illegal weapon really fast,
Exactly, yeah.
So I love that. I love that concept.
It brings the theme so much to the forefront because you're kind of saying, let's just lean on the theme 100%. You know.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. So, I am gonna talk to my daughter real quick. I'm gonna mute.
Yeah,
so yeah.
that's okay. Yeah.
Well, we'll see. It depends on what she's eating. So.
Oh, I see. Oh, he didn't. I didn't see the mute. So, but okay. So we're on the ship,
Yes.
I think. Oh yes,
Yeah.
It's raining. You were eating. They had a Crucian talk, and Tim doesn't know this yet, but there is a
Maybe he's listening.
commotion. No, that's okay. There is a
Yes.
commotion going on the lower decks.
Oh,
We're gonna have to
yes.
figure out what it is. I'm just gonna wait for Tim. But Barker said that. Let's go in the chat. That paradigm is what draws players to form real connections and feelings for their animal companions, NPC friends, in significant locations. In my opinion, it happens iteratively. Yes. I feel like there are a lot of reasons I want to. The game, or like the thing I've created, I called hook and loop. And there are a lot of reasons. Like, there's no just one particular reason I feel like I'm going to say this is the reason a lot of different times.
Right.
But one of the reasons is because everything is a hook. And to some degree, a loop to me is saying something now so that you can say it with time between now and later. And for some reason, culturally, it matters more later because we said it now.
Sure.
I can't exactly describe that concept, but those loops of like, no, we just say one thing now to say it, and what it is later is... That's it.
So I think that it's because familiarity has far more power than we give it credit for.
Yeah.
And I've noticed this a lot in films. If something happens in the third act that was only lightly mentioned in the first act, it causes an emotional stirring in me. If something is not mentioned in the first act and happens in the third act, I feel far more neutral about it. It is this call and response thing where even if it is not an emotional stirring thing. If someone mentions something in the first part of a film about how they're going to go and take a class, if the film ends with like, hey, I finally get to go take my class, you feel some sense of connection that's deeper, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If that thing was mentioned and it is then mentioned again. Familiarity is one of the biggest weapons that is underused in storytelling.
And then, go ahead, Cassie. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, you could also, another way to phrase it might be foreshadowing. We are now planting these little things, and it's up to us to then, loop it around, I suppose.
To close the loop, as Barker said, closing the loop. Absolutely. And that's what is really interesting. And so, the name does come from the real name to Velcro and the joke that they, whatever. But that's not part of the oral tradition as to why this game is called Hook and Loop. That is just trivia. No, I was going to say something about that, Cassie. Oh, dang. Loops. What was I going to say? I got so distracted by everything else we were talking about.
You were going to talk about foreshadowing, which is the new Tabletop Terrors edition of foreshadowing. It's the new version. No.
So no, but I do remember. Thank you. No, that did help.
We're relaunching foreshadowing.
Yeah, it was about foreshadowing. The other way to say that as well, Cassie, is and I guess anyone, but to what you mentioned, anything they say in a TV show will come up later. Like, literally, there's like no thing in, like, say, an episode of Bob's Burgers that is not a joke or that serves the narrative later. There is no thing that is not part of the story. And so that's another reason it's hook and loop, the Velcro thing. Velcro is called the hook and loop system, right? There are hooks and loops, and you mash them together and they stick. The point is, every hook goes to any loop. You know what I mean? Like, if you say you're a beastkeeper, we're going to have beastkeeper stuff. If you say you worship the dismembered lord, we're going to worship the dismembered lord. Like, because if they say it in a TV show and it doesn't come up, you scratch your head and go, why did they say that?
Yeah.
So,
exactly. It's cut.
Yeah, exactly. So, that was sort of a little intermission. If you guys wanted to do a bio break and stuff, we could. I know we'll probably go for another 40 minutes and then chat for a little bit until 5. But if everybody wanted to take a break now, that would be cool. But
I'll take a quick break and take a bio break and get my daughter a small treat.
Okay, awesome. So we'll take a quick break. I'll remember how to go to the other thing. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us. Just be, 5-10 minutes, whatever. Probably not even 10 minutes. Just a quick break to grab a drink and hang out. But we'll be back here just in a minute. So Tim said he used his one use of a shrink ray on a 6-pack of Sprite, making it slightly smaller. But then, though this is a fantasy game, I had science fiction questions, because when he said he shrunk it, I thought, okay, wait. But the amount, when you shrink a liquid, it more clearly shows or makes me consider that you must be shrinking the individual molecules, right? You're not making less Sprite, and then if you were to make it bigger, you wouldn't be making more Sprite, you would just make bigger molecules. Suddenly, the idea of a shrink ray and a make bigger ray is blowing my mind. Because you're not necessarily adding more molecules, you're just making... So what does it mean to have big molecules with Sprite? Yeah, Kiel.
What if it's because is it the molecules or the...
I don't know
smaller than
science.
Molecules? Like, you know, that the
everything
has gaps
protons
between
and
it.
neutrons. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Some like quantum
just
space.
expanding or contracting.
Okay,
Those quantum gaps. You know, maybe
It's
that's
just-
how it works.
You've just invented a shrink and grow ray. Thank you for
listen.
helping me with that.
I'm
So
going to call
Awesome,
it
Kiel.
quantum gap.
it's
Quantum
very
gap
much
shrink ray technology.
it's very much like Photoshop, where it either removes the right pixels so that it looks the
Yes.
right way, or it adds a bunch. So if you ever grow something, it looks super blurry and grainy.
Yeah.
I can taste the JPEG artifacts in this
Right.
Sprite now that I've made it so much bigger.
I made this smaller because it needed to be my favicon on my website, and this is the only size they'll let.
Oh my gosh, that is the reason to make something smaller. That is perfectly a me joke. Barker says the aluminum can is porous enough to allow the gases to release without issue. I wasn't even thinking about the gases. Now you got me on some other stuff. I was just
James is
thinking about the liquid.
He goes. James just goes back to formula.
It actually just flattens the soda. Yeah, shrinking is such a common thing, but very quickly becomes either unbelievably smart supercomputers, mass destroyers, or mass creators. Yeah, I can't wrap my head around shrinking. Yeah.
Remember the fairy flies that we discovered that are
Yes.
less than like a millimeter small? We found. Oh my god. Okay.
That's terrifying.
There's okay, but the important thing is they're literally so tiny that they're pushing the limits of this has become a different thing. We're not going
I
to finish
know.
this game in a million years. They're pushing the limits of like they have to look it up under microscopes. Like literally
The limits of what's possible. What is the tiniest you can be while having something of a nervous system? What is the smallest little bit of life basically possible?
I
It
don't know
has
what
a
it's
nervous
creature.
system.
It has a
No,
nervous
I
system.
don't think
and
it does
like-
actually.
It just has a nerve. I have one.
It
This
is-
is what that fly says. I got one nerve left, and you're dancing all over it.
Dancing. Oh man, the dancing.
Oh my god. But okay. So that was cool. Here's a Wikipedia. I'm posting it in YouTube for whoever's curious.
This is all
Okay,
in
perfect,
game.
perfect. This is all.
It's all in game
Grin
now.
has a wiki.
Well, you guys.
Exactly.
Well, you took off your VR headsets when you were playing in Dragongrin, and now you're in the real world, and that's what we're talking about. And then you're gonna put them.
Yeah.
That got more poignant than I realized. But okay, so as I was saying, when Evie came in,
Yes.
There's a commotion below deck.
there's a commotion below deck, and if you were to look outside, or maybe somebody comes rushing from above decks and screams the words you don't want to hear and starts ringing a bell. Bleak storm, and he's ringing the bell, and everybody's getting to their locations, and you continue to hear the commotion from below deck. So okay, it's about to be a bleak storm. What are you doing? There's probably there's
I
probably
love how you just knocked it down a peg.
I
All
moved
right,
it.
it's about to be a. That's so Dragongrin. Oh,
yeah.
jeez. I
We
thought
moved
were
out
gonna
of
have
talking
good
in
weather.
story. No. So yeah, there's a you don't know what kind or what's going on yet, right? You just hear somebody yelling it. Presumably they're right. They're a sailor, but they could be wrong. You never know. Maybe somebody freaked out. You know, don't yell fire in a crowded theater. Don't yell bleak storm on a ship on the shattered seas. All right. So what do? You don't work on the ship. You're trying to stay out of their way. I'm not sure what you would do. Would you go look at it, or would you stay below decks? I don't know. Kiel, what are you doing? What's your character doing in a bleak storm on a ship?
Yeah, good question.
I mean, like, if hunkering down is the answer, that's okay. Like, stuff is still going to happen, but, like, I want to know, like, what your character does, not, like, you know.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it being cool. If you hide under a table, that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I feel like, pain has been like pretty sort of stoic, I guess, up to this point. You know, even with the Arcseer, the Sigil Scarred flying over back at the dock, you know, he was all like sort of smug and trying to be cool about it. And you know, with the would-be assassin in the night, he was collected and cool about it. But I think we see on his face here some genuine terror as the bleak storm like comes into view. You know, it's that feeling of the low air pressure before a storm in the real world, but there's like this sort of this electricity in the air, sort of this crackling, I guess. And and he's just I guess he would actually look, he'd be looking around to try and find Saldina, despite their sort of mostly good-natured jibes at each other. He does care about his partner.
Right.
His
Who else
fellow
do you
Raven.
look to? Yeah. But the one of two other people you know in the world here, potentially. You know?
Yeah, exactly. So
Saldina has definitely been there, even though she's not crazy about pain. She is definitely serious about whatever they've been assigned to deliver, and hasn't been wandering far off. But being the type of crow that she has definitely been talking to other passengers and whatnot. And with the bleak storm suddenly coming, she is quickly back at Payne's side. And she's clearly not excited to be down here. She was probably popped her head up on the top deck, saw the rain coming in, saw this crazy storms, and yeah, she is just not excited. Oh gosh, I know below decks must smell awful with all those animals, but I'm sure it smells just as bad up here. And she knows it's close quarters, and she is making her way towards her hammock where you know, everybody's kind of, all the hammocks are lined up, it's close quarters and whatnot. But as far as sleeping, so she's going back to her stuff to try and tie it down any way she can.
Okay, so Brooks, you hear more of this commotion from below decks, and then you hear what you know to be, and maybe not anybody else knows to be, without a doubt, that cage below deck bursting open and something coming out of it.
Okay, because that was going to be, so my reaction to the bleak storm was going to be flip that crate open, run, find an animal, cut it open, and climb inside. No, I'm just kidding.
Listen, it's
I
all
think
about
it's
problem
certain
solving,
doom.
like, yeah.
Well, no, I just think if I was a superstitious person, I would be like, well, bleak storm means we're going to die. And I just start doing bucket list stuff.
Oh, I see.
Like the plane starts to crash and then stabilizes, and then I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have shouted my darkest secrets.
Exactly.
No, I think that if I know that cage like slammed open, I would go and take one step, leaning my weight to like walk away as quickly as I could. And then I would sort of feel compelled, like, I have to check. I don't want to, but there's something in me that's like, I have to just check, just to make sure that the animals are okay.
Yeah,
that this thing doesn't immediately start feasting on the animals.
Oh, yes, and,
You know?
and I think that's exactly the next thing it will do is start eating, depending on what it is, right? We don't know exactly. What I will say is...
I think you might have an idea based off of that, but
That's what's funny. I really don't, but I'm excited.
Okay.
I just am like,
I
it's
do
probably
have an
something that would
idea.
eat livestock.
Okay,
But what I wanted to say
I-
is
yeah.
you probably have something that would allow you some control over it. Think like a shock collar, not like you can like talk to it, but like hopefully
Sure.
you can get it to do what you want. You know what I mean? You probably have something. I don't know what that looks like for you, but nobody else would. But this thing is probably going to break out, and you know.
And it depends if you want it to be some sort of a because the equivalent of what I would have for sure, the Beastkeeper has like a small like whip and like some things that would sort of to tame. There's like a muzzle
yeah,
situation.
yeah.
I also have mechanically, although narratively in the book, I have an animal friend.
Oh
that
yeah,
I've tamed.
they could be here, like if you want, absolutely,
And-
like yeah.
Excuse me. I think what I was doing was saving a time for it to come out.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just want to say, I don't know if this person is still watching, but the person who was worried about saying something that isn't cool, or just they were talking about their contributions to the game where they feel like they're just saying the same things over and over. I'm going to say something that is like very stock and very tropey, but I think I just want to roll with it because it makes sense to me. Instead of coming up with a cool like creature, I'm just going to say I have like a little howler monkey.
Which is really interesting. After that setup, I definitely thought you were going to say dog, but okay. Which is fine. I want
No, but
to...
like the pet that most
it.
people have in the movies is a monkey. It's the thing. Like that follows them around and interacts and steals keys and it's almost always a monkey. You know what I mean? Because dogs can't grab and smile at cameras.
And that's true. Exactly. I was thinking more Beastkeeper, less cultural, because that's fair. I was definitely...
There's so many movies with dogs. They could do anything, Tim.
No, but that's what's funny. It was very clear difference in context, but I just thought it was so funny that you said all that, and I thought I for sure knew what you were leading up to. But what I did want to say...
Just go with the dog. Maybe it's a howler dog.
A howler dog. When you said howler, I'm like,
why not?
But what I did want to say was, that's the other thing, is there's also this shyness, like, away from doing the thing that is the thing. Like, you're on a boat on the way to Zaman in a bleak storm. Like... It's okay. It doesn't have to be an airship, you know what I mean, on the way to kill the dismembered lord, you know? Like, no, that's just cool to be there. So it's cool that it's just a howler monkey. Like you said, it doesn't matter that it's been done. You get to do the things from all the movies, and, like, that's not a bad thing. So
yeah, and shared reference is such a quick way to get everybody immediately on the same page, and then they start having ideas. If I was like, it's a single-toed, like, you know, ape sloth from they'd be like, what does it do? How does it look? But when I say howler monkey, everyone's like high-fiving my animal friend all of a sudden.
Right? Suddenly you're like, we were imagining scenes that happened already. Yeah.
Exactly. And then
the shared reference of Pirates of the Caribbean came to me. Yeah.
Perfect. Exactly.
Yeah. I thought
Pirates of the Caribbean, Indiana Jones, Goonies, the hit sitcom Friends.
There's a capuchin monkey, which is really popular. That's like the Pirates of the Caribbean monkey. That's it.
Oh,
that's it. Capuchin monkey. See, and you can also use the wrong name, and everybody still gets the same reference.
You gave me the references. I got it.
No, you're great. And so some of the people in the chat said this, and I honestly didn't even connect this as well. But they were like, "Hey, bro's bringing the little guy back to the jungles of Zaman."
Right.
And then because the monkey, that's what Barker said, and then Matthew was like, "Because the monkey is just the little guy." It's so great. So maybe that is exactly one of the things that I'm doing. So anyway, I would go to wherever the crate was carefully to see if this thing was immediately hurting the other animals. And I would have my whip out.
Yeah, do you know what it would be? Basically, you go below decks and you see it potentially killing somebody, eating somebody.
Oh, geez. Is it a human or a creature? A human or an animal?
A human is what it's attacked. So what's funny is the animals are safest because they're in cages, if you think about it, right? So somebody was down there, and they got attacked because it escaped and couldn't get to anything in the cages yet. You know what I mean? So I have an idea of who it was, but so Tim, basically, yes. What is this creature? You can name it. Yeah. Come up with something.
Well, so let me ask you, give me a number from 1 to 10 on how crazy it can be.
10, 11.
I think
you're going to pacify it. You still do have to make it on the ship, right? Basically, this thing doesn't sink the ship and end the world, is, I guess, my only constraint. So it can be an 11, but if it's an archer mount that kills you all, I mean...
No, because I was thinking, so we were talking about how this is a Zarfin situation. Yeah. And so
something
it's
about
this...
alchemy. I forgot
something about alchemy, something about that. Right, so I'm thinking that, so there is this legend in Jahar of something known as the Rictus.
Oh, yeah.
And the Rictus is, spoiler alert, is actually a death maw, but I don't think that this creature is a death maw. I think it's one of the death maw's smaller servants called voicelings.
Okay, yeah.
So I think that the difference here is that this voiceling, though, has been augmented by Arkans or some sort of Titan technology in some way for some use. So this thing is not necessarily supposed to just be a monster of science. It is supposed to have a specific task. My thought is it's designed to, and I'm just imagining maybe this like voiceling, which is like these smaller mouths that has this thing like embedded, like this like razor fin and like maybe arcanic teeth or something. I think it's designed specifically to be used to uncover primordial remains. And the Zarfins are sending it to Zaman so that it can basically eat. It's like a critter.
It's a truffle pig, right? For
it's a
primordial
truffle
remains.
pig.
That
it's
is
a truffle
also
pig. Shared reference.
Amazing. That
so
is
it's
like
a truffle
yeah.
pig.
But
it eats other stuff.
Exactly,
too.
a voiceling that has arcanite like different things built into it, but that's tamed and has a job, but that is still a creature that can. So, and
is probably very hungry, especially if they subdued it in some way. And now it has awakened. Yeah. It's probably feeding time.
So Cassie, yeah.
What does a voiceling look like?
So I will get with Alexander Kostic and let you know. No, we didn't.
Well, but I want to show you a death.
We can show her. I was gonna say you can see the death maw. The voicelings we didn't have art for, so we sort of abstracted it, if I recall. Okay. It's only.
Do you happen to know a page on that? I'm sorry.
Yep. Well, no, but I can find it very quickly.
Yeah,
it's the last page. So go to. Yeah, I do know. If you go to page. Because it's basically go to sphere. It's the last page of Jahar. So page 269.
Sweet.
269. If you also turn on screen sharing for everybody, I have the PDF and I can always do like
something way better than holding up the book. So that is the thing that is the death maw. I'm imagining a voiceling is Tim, yeah.
I was just gonna say if I was pressed and you're like, hey, we need to make this art today, I would make the voiceling essentially look like one of its stalks.
Well, you can share now if you want. Yeah, okay. Oh, I see. So it's like a snake. I don't know.
Essentially, almost like this eel. Now they can fly.
Oh, okay.
So they are floating situations. So it's like here, I'll do
a floating eel with a big, a giant mouth that is going to eat you.
Right. So I don't know if is this showing properly.
It's showing okay. It's the fault of my overlay that it's not showing. It's breaking out of it a little bit, but that's not your fault. So yeah, it's showing.
I could just zoom in. So
cool.
But like I'm imagining, I don't know how much you can see, but I'm imagining the voiceling being one of these.
Okay.
A little guy, death maw, exactly.
A little guy, and I imagine that those maybe like I don't know.
He's a pup. He's a death pup.
Yeah, and so maybe I'm gonna make this cooler in my opinion. I think a voiceling always has two heads. So it's two of those. It's not just one.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, because I did
That's more dangerous. Because one can be eating while the other one's looking around and like, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah. So anyway.
Okay, so this, right. So this creature comes out of here, comes out of the cage that it's in. And voicing's just a little guy, yeah.
Just a little guy. It's just a little guy, Death Maw.
And
more like a death smirk.
So I am wondering. So it immediately kills the first person that was down there, and so it is when you go down there, it is already feasting on somebody. And I imagine, like you said, it's I don't know, like just two heads connected. Like I'm not sure.
A two-headed snake, basically.
Okay, a two-headed snake that will eventually grow other stalks. I imagine, like you know what I mean. Like it's like as it grows up, it's not just getting bigger. It's like
correct. I imagine it is much like a two-headed snake. I would say that it's probably got a shared base. That's some sort of like because they again, according to what they are looking at here, they don't crawl. They like float.
Yeah, exactly.
So this thing it doesn't need a tail necessarily other than to cut through the air. So I imagine that the mobility of it is based on like it being able to, I would like it to be able to bite two people across the room.
Okay, yeah. So basically a two-mouthed snake that's pretty long and can float and generally fly. Like, yeah.
I'm sorry. Parker said, one of us would have guys tell the truth. One of us tells the why. What was wrong with the Y?
This is the riddle portion where you get to talk to this. You get to try to talk to this creature, and that's what they say. Barker, thanks for spoiling my encounter. No. So this thing has then, in that case, it has wrapped itself around somebody.
Ooh.
Somebody that you realize was fiddling with the cage. This cage didn't open on accident, but it immediately jumps on this person and starts attacking them. And so it
Fiddles
I
cages.
imagine I imagine it like wrapped around his neck and with both mouths is like biting different parts and just taking chunks out of this thing, this person. And so Tim, you are now down there. You have your howler monkey. You've got your Indiana Jones hat and whip. How do you subdue this creature? What is the protocol here? This guy's dead, obviously. You know that it's too late for him.
Oh, okay.
You probably
That was
have
gonna
like
be,
you probably have like a split second where it's distracted and not killing you. I also realize that because of the creature we decided it is, the livestock is not safe because it can just go between the bars. But you have a moment before this thing kills anything else. So what's the play here?
So it has a really fat bottom that won't fit through the cage. I'm kidding. It's just doom, doom, doom. I think that just practically speaking, this voiceling that is like arcanically altered. Well, that's double terrifying, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it just gets worse by the second.
Yeah, like what are we doing in Dragongrin? Why did we come here on vacation? No, I think that, just practically speaking, I would probably use that moment where it was eating the person to gather myself and think of a plan, because it's going to eat that person. I'm thinking the big bits, not to the bone, but like anywhere where there's meat, like a leg. You know what I mean? It's like eating a chicken wing. You know what I mean? It's just kind of getting all the meaty parts. This person is more of a drumstick than a flat.
Yeah, like it's trying to get a lot of food and then it'll eat it all. So to some degree, one thing you could do is you could try to shove the guy and it back in the cage and close it up. I didn't think about that, right?
So let's do that. While it's distracted, I'm going to try to like flip it up on like it back in, like just
basically he's like near it and you'd need to like kind of open the gate and like shove it back in.
And because it floats, I'm essentially trying to get it above the hole of the cage or the crate, and then slam what I imagine to be a lid.
Okay, yeah.
Sort of like trying to.
I was imagining more a raptor situation from Jurassic Park, but I like the lid because you're right with the floating. It's like I like there being a lid, because that actually brings up a good point, right? So you throw them in there and it tries to start floating out, and the mouths are like coming out of the lid as you're trying to like knock them in there and keep this thing shut. But the lock is broken. So now you're sitting on top of this thing, while it's trying to get out. You can't really move, but you have to, potentially lock it back in there. I was afraid it would get out, but you acted pretty quickly. Would Pain or
Saldina.
Oh, man. I guess you guys wouldn't be down there, right? This is part of it where I'd be like, okay, well, you guys are down there because you're together, and that's the show. You know what I mean? But
Cassie did make mention of that. I don't know if you still want to be there, but she was like, well, because of the bleak storm, she had mentioned, well, it's probably just as bad down below.
And to some degree, another way to put it would be, what's an excuse you would have to go down there? Sorry, go ahead, Cassie.
A bleak storm?
Yeah, right? That's what I mean. Like, that's a good one. Yeah. We just need any excuse. Yeah.
I had a question as far as enhancing the role play and whatnot.
Yeah.
Tim, what's your character's name again? Oh, Brooks. There we
Brooks,
go.
Yeah.
Brooks goes down there, and I, as out of character, have an idea. Like, I want to toss Tim a weapon or something for the encounter. Like, could I just suggest something? Because when I think of this voiceling, this two-headed snake kind of thing, I'm like, well, this Beastmaster, maybe he's going to recognize on the wall there's like a little handy-dandy snake holder or something. There was something there probably just in case you had to handle a snake or some serpentine thing. Who knows what else is being shipped. And like I can imagine Brooks trying to hold maybe an arcane little snake stick, trying to pin it to the floor and then finagle like all that stuff. So yeah, how do we I don't know. Is that a good idea, or how do we allow that to happen? Because
No, I see what you mean.
Always
I
make
do
it.
really like that. So I think basically what we're trying to do is tell the story of this thing getting out and potentially constraining it. So a simple way to do that would be,
like as a Beastmaster, Brooks would absolutely recognize weapons or tools to use it. But I don't know, Tim, have you watched like some snake handling videos and whatnot? How can we make the
Preparation for this
scene
game.
like really cool? You know, like
Yeah, I have seen where essentially they use. I've seen. You know what I have seen? It might not have been snake, but like gator handling, where it's essentially a really long pole with a loop, and they try to like catch it somewhere where it can't open its mouth, basically.
yeah.
Because
so
it
imagine
has
if you had-
so much pressure down, but no pressure up.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So imagine if you had two of those that were somehow arcane. So maybe
Yeah.
that's what
Wow.
it is it's now under the you're sitting on top of it, but the tool that you need to restrain it, it is in a container, eating this person as they're screaming. Their screams are subsiding slowly. But the
Oh, I forgot they're still alive. Oh, my
Oh
God.
yeah, well, I mean, not long, really. We kind of, real time.
Oh,
But
not
so then-
long. He's like,
Brooks just dumped a still living guy as he was eaten into the box.
yeah, but he knew that it was
He
like
knew.
there was no saving this person.
that was kind of the thing, right? Like I imagine, and it's just a little bit of a content warning, but I imagine something like this is a predator. It would probably latch onto the face first.
Yeah, like right. Oh,
And then so like one head would probably very quickly find the face or the head of something and just similar to a snake,
Yeah.
where it's like, and then the rest is just figuring out how to eat the rest of the, like so.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
when you see a voiceling latched onto the face, it's like, oh yeah, there's no coming back from that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Not in Dragongrin, where there's no health potions. It's like I'm already like being like, enjoy the gray.
Yeah, I think I messed up the zoom there. Yep.
That
Totally
guy's
messed up.
gonna haunt me.
Maybe he can take my letter with him to the Wailing Grove.
That's not a bad idea.
All right, that'll work. Sorry, we disappeared because I accidentally.
Oh, you changed scenes, probably.
No, I minimized zoom or like clicked on the thing that made zoom go small.
Oh, yes.
And I think I have to re-add it. Is that the only way to get it back?
Barker said, one bite at a time. Love that. Oh, hey, Cristiano, which I might be saying your name correctly. Oh, and Matthew jumped in. We're playtesting a new narrative system James has devised. I'll just read Matthew's comment because it was perfect.
Sorry, I have to recapture zoom. I suppose
you're
we
good.
will be finishing up here soon. As unsatisfying as that is, man, yeah, wow, I can't. This
That's
window
okay. There was a lot to
refuses
talk
lock.
about.
No, totally, yeah.
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
and
sad
I-
about the
yeah.
zoom window not wanting to come up.
So,
Also, yeah.
well, I was going to say occasionally what it'll do for me is that it will lock in if you click view up in the top right and go from speaker back to gallery or go from full screen. Like if you shake it, because what it can sometimes do is essentially become a bar that locks to the top of your screen, even though it doesn't show it there.
Oh, yeah. See, what I mean is I can see it for you. I can't get it to show on
Or YouTube.
Yes.
OBS. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Well, the
Like
dismembered
adding
Lord
the
is
zoom
taken
window
over.
is just like nothing, and I want to change it, but I'm like, I can
Oh.
change it to that. You guys can see that. You're allowed to see that. And then, okay. But you were to some degree right, Tim. Even though I re-added it, I did have to like undo it.
It's very bizarre.
And then
it's
redo it.
yeah. It's very finicky lately after this latest update, which it forced me to do, by the way.
Under the border. Okay. Yeah.
Well,
right.
and
Getcha.
I have a medium stop at 5, basically.
Yeah. No, that's sort of. And
So,
if you
like-
want to, yeah. That's.
So
what
I was just going to say,
dump
did you
out.
want to discuss the game at this point? Because I did have
Yeah,
one
yeah.
question that I wanted to ask at least.
Yeah, so we can move into discussion and talking about it. And if you leave at 5, maybe we'll hang out a little bit longer after.
Absolutely,
and
feel
talk
free
and
to.
stuff.
Yeah. No.
But yeah, so yeah, feel free. Basically, yeah. Yeah.
So-
hit me.
Specifically, something that happened was I said, "This is what I want to do," and you said, "Okay, it happens." So, but then there was this threat where I'm now sitting on the box. Is that the loop of the game where, as you mentioned earlier, like it's not about failing, but it's more about like, okay, you did it. Now we're going to come up with the consequences of that having happened. Because I was trying to see how we were going to resolve me flipping this creature and this, and so I immediately succeeded, and it was about the story. So I just wanted to pick your brain on that. Is that how it's always going to work? And was that just on the fly, and was that on purpose?
So especially at the end there, I would say it was more on the fly. The way I would really like to see that happen is we say, okay, you're going to put the person in there, and then you would describe what it looks like. You would describe it biting his face and describe it falling down.
Got it.
You would, like, as part of your turn, you doing it, resolving it is telling me what happens.
Got it.
Yeah. So in
Okay,
that
perfect.
way, we did kind of play it fast and loose with that a little bit, but I also think that also comes and goes. As far
Sure.
as during the game, I imagine some parts will be more, like, played up, and some parts will be a little more like, this is cool, but this is, you know what I mean? It's less important in a sense. Yeah.
Sure, and maybe kind of following the RPG adage as a guide of, like, if it's not worth a roll, don't roll. If it's not worth an explanation, don't explain it.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Like you
know?
everything you're saying is it should be important to the story, or at least tell us something about you. If you drink ale
Sure.
all the time, you know.
Yeah, I love that. Like, if it matters, describe it. If it doesn't, hand wave it.
Yeah. What's up, Cassie?
I was thinking that to really play up that scene where like you're sitting on the box, I was wondering if you would roll for scenes like that or not. Like you use your discretion as a GM for what happens at these pivotal moments. But it could be fun to be like, okay, Tim Booth rolls a body in there, and as James, you could be like, and the box rattles and shakes. You roll a die or make your decision and say, does it pop out, or maybe it does indeed stay? Like,
Well, and so we didn't get to it, but it was going to come out. It didn't. We
Okay.
didn't get enough screen time with it, so it had to come back out.
Yeah.
I do like the idea, to your question though, of finding where the roles belong. I don't think we came across a lot of those here. I was still kind of getting
don't
into
think we
running it
rolled
and
at
seeing
all.
what I needed. Not at all. I
Yeah.
rolled a few times to decide on people, but to some degree, I never felt the need to. Because we didn't come across very many situations where we cared about the role. There wasn't
Yeah.
a this or that. It was something was happening, and I think that's okay. But there were times when you and I played that, like, for example, you met somebody, and I said, okay, are you in good terms with this person or bad terms? I might have you roll for that, because I want to see that random outcome, you know?
Yeah.
But in general, no. I mean, I especially with the three of you, I didn't think there was any need to roll. To some degree, you could have asked at any time to say, oh, I want to roll to see this about myself, you know?
true.
And I can see some level of that as well. The biggest thing I would say I ran into is I had an idea of some of the things I wanted to happen, and I didn't feel like that was bad. You know, I didn't feel like I felt like I was able to do it. Things really were like clicking, things I think that I'll easily be able to bring back later. Like, it was going well. The one thing I wasn't sure about, though, was how to decide what scenes to have. And I think that came down to not setting up character connections beforehand. Had we known,
Gotcha.
had we talked about deciding you were Crucian before, we probably would have jumped into that more. The way you did. You know, it was we faltered a little bit there until you found something, and I realized, oh, well, we need to not look for something. It needs to be right there, you know.
Sure.
Beyond that, a lot of the game is seeing, like, different things happen. And so to some degree, yeah, I wanted you to be characters on a ship during a bleak storm and a creature gets out, right? What's interesting is... Yeah, so I suppose really then with that, what did you think about the idea of, instead of the game being what you're used to, rolling and seeing how well you do, I guess is one way to put it, and instead being learning what's happening, how did you feel about some of those scenes, right? We didn't resolve anything, you didn't gain any loot, you gained no progression, you just gained knowledge, which is sort of the point of the game would be knowledge as progression. I would want you to come back next week because you say, I want to know what happens. Not because necessarily you want to level up your sword. I want to do that too, but right now I'm in search for, well, what makes you want to come back when there is no sword to level up, you know? So what did you guys think about that aspect of, like, how was it as a game? You know, what was missing? Let's say that if there was something missing, what would be missing?
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I think the the quest log that you've got here, where each sort of thread or whatever is like a quest, right?
Yeah.
You know, and those are the seeds of arcs, basically. And then every session is about which of those quests or arc or you know, story seeds gets progressed along its arc. You know, one of them might be resolved in the first session. Another one might not even have any screen time in session one, really, but then, or, you know, maybe just a little bit of establishing, but then, you know, in session two, that can then be the focus. You know, I guess basically just tie it back to your thing about faltering and trying to find scenes. I think between the characters and these story seeds, these quests, that's kind of where you can draw that from, right?
Yeah, like I almost forgot my own stuff I set up. Yeah, where it's like I had those, and yes, I should have been like, okay, well, what would you talk about? Well, again, you found Crucian, but to some degree, for the viewers, right, we'll say, because we're kind of doing this as a story to be observed, as though it were a book. To the viewers, you will talk about the fact that you're Crucian because otherwise we don't know you are. So, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I see what you mean. Like, what I needed to do was when I was struggling to find a scene, I should have looked at some of these things we wrote down and said, okay, this comes up. What happens? You know what I mean? Like, so I love that, Kiel. Absolutely. Like, and that's what I was trying to do. But even in doing it, I kind of, it's the first time I've run a game in a while, and I think it went really well, but it still takes a lot of things. It takes a lot of effort to like remember all the things you set up or something like that, you know? So, yeah, I think getting used to that. But so I like, I'll have to look more to that.
I was just going to say, I wouldn't say that anything is necessarily missing. I didn't feel like anything was missing. So
what would, that's fair.
I just, there are ideas things that you could do. Now, I don't really have the time to ask you questions about it, so I'm going to make assumptions, and I know that's usually dangerous, but it could be interesting. And I know by nature of how we played online and this playtest, it was the character sheets were one way, but I think having each character know their own character sheet and not know each other's could make it interesting.
Oh, yeah.
It's not necessarily required, because I also am a fan of meta saying, oh, well, how would I know? Is there a way that I would know, Kiel, that you're loyal to the Dismembered Lord? So there's also an argument for I actually do like it also.
Yeah.
But I was able to see everyone's because as a writer's room, I should have that information.
Exactly. To me, it's important. So, there would certainly be things you could hold back from that.
Right.
But
So I guess that, again, it was more just a thought study of like, would it be more beneficial? And I think at the end of the day, it's better that we all see each other's stuff, which is a big change. Usually your character sheet is your own thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the other thing was, I think one thing that, again, it's not something that I need, but something that could be in the social contract is I didn't know how much I could flesh out about myself if you had that gated. So could I have come out of the gate and said, I am a spell blood, and start slinging spells, like some sort of potential unrolling of like, hey, first we're going to explore through the lens of our backgrounds, or so that I know what I'm allowed to go into and what I should stop, because that's for scene 2 or session 2.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense, and I do think that more clarity would be helpful there. I think the big thing is you could have said those things, and that would have been just fine.
Cool.
But that's the point, is we didn't talk about that, and it makes sense that that you're saying that. You know what I mean? That makes perfect sense. Yeah, sorry. For a second, I thought that I messed up the Zoom again, so I was getting distracted.
Oh, no, you're good. And I'm talking a lot because I have to kind of go. But
yeah, totally, yeah.
The final thought I'll give you on that is that it can be fun when the iron is hot and we're coming up with names and, this is your background. It can be fun to kind of go through and kind of lock everything else in also. Oh, I'm a Mord. Oh, I'm also, a cleric. It can also be fun to explore those things. So I think having some guidelines is maybe an interesting way to do it, where maybe Kiel decides to look through the lens of Beastkeeper, but I decide to look through the lens of Marauder. So it's not necessarily that anyone has more weight, because the system you've designed, it doesn't matter. what
Yeah,
I say I
yeah.
am. I can do all the things. It's not like I get a +5 over here.
Exactly.
So maybe
'cause that's more a constraint of this session. Like, yeah, I was trying to
Sure.
put it to backgrounds, but you're right. I see what you
which
mean.
I think is great. So maybe a number of foci that is decided upon by you or the group, so that it's like, I know that I have 2 lenses to pick from that I want to use in this session that I have to have ready. Everything else is,
Yeah.
because that could be my heritage and my background, and that's really important to me. It could be, I don't know what my heritage is, and it's just my class and my culture.
Yeah.
But
no,
it
exactly.
all plays the
But
same.
yes.
So
And then
anyway.
that's the important thing, is I see what you mean, because that is the whole point. But you're saying a little more guidance on what things you could choose from and what things those could be.
Or how many you want to be locked in before everyone else goes, or how many you want to be explored.
Because I guess
play.
that's fair. I'm like, I had no amounts. The point is, like, I understand that there should be guidelines, but my goal was, I want you to have as many as you want to have. You know what I mean? Like, but I see what
And
you're
even
saying.
as simple as saying that, because
Yeah.
the standard trope is, when you make a character, follow steps X through Z, and you'll have a character.
Yeah.
So if you say, hey, follow steps X through Z whenever you want, that's also okay, as long as we know that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And a lot of it is the actual rules of the game missing because it's a playtest. So that is completely fair. But in the final, if I were to give this to somebody else to run, it would be a lot more clear. I played it very fast and loose with that.
No, and that's totally, again,
yeah.
just making sure that it was like, hey, that was my only feedback was, I didn't know if I should hang all these guns on the wall right now, like we're getting ready to party, or if it was like a slow burn,
Totally,
so
yeah.
anyway.
And to some degree, to me, I imagine that will eventually come down to play style. Because I imagine there will be some players where you're like, man, that guy's always hanging guns on the wall, but it's always coming back, where it's like your play style is to do that a lot, or to act to direct the narrative a specific way,
And this will be my final thought, because I do have to go, but I just want to let you know that it felt like a very distinct game. It didn't feel to me like D&D, and it didn't quite feel to me like any other game I've played exactly. So I think you're onto something, and I think that it felt good.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's really amazing to hear. That's really cool. Because it was a lot of fun to run, and it seemed like we got to see so many cool things in Dragongrin, and we kind of barely got started. You know what I mean? Like, there are times where I just want to see the world, and it's so hard. So this was really cool for that, where I'm like, yeah, I just want to see what those things look like in the world,
Yeah, so awesome. Well, thank you, Kiel and Cassie. Awesome playtest, and James, thank you for running it. And for anyone celebrating it, have a happy Thanksgiving. And for those who aren't, have an incredible rest of the week.
Cool, yeah, see you, Tim.
So thanks so much. Hope I don't explode your Zoom here.
Yeah, no, it should be all right, because we're just capturing the window.
Thank you.
Boom.
Bye. You're welcome.
Bye.
Yeah, so if you guys don't have anywhere to be, I figure we'll hang out and talk about it a little bit. I'd love to hear a little more.
Yeah, I got more time.
Yeah, what did you think, Kiel? It's weird to me because I don't consider it a game, and I understand why it's a game, and I understand, but I'm like, we didn't actually play anything. I don't know. Yeah, what did you think?
Yeah. I mean, it's like a role playing or / storytelling framework, I guess, at the moment, like more than a game, if that's what you're thinking.
Yeah, it's just like guidelines for us to tell a story. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
And it is a game, but yeah, right. I know.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
somebody requested it.
Yeah. No, that's perfect.
Hello, she's so nice.
Yeah.
I love it. I love this style of play, collaborative storytelling in this kind of sense. And yeah, like Tim said, I think you're definitely onto something here as well with the way that it's sort of coming together. Have some more ideas as well about circling back to where we're talking about, trying to sort of come up with scenes, and where we ended up having that Crucian conversation, right?
Yeah.
That's like taking that and working backwards from there. The prompt for that scene could be like common ground,
Oh,
it's like,
yeah.
having sort of a list of prompts or something, or a list of scene types, which haven't had any work, haven't developed it for a while now, but the Story D6 system that I have in development has a lot of similarities to this, as we know.
Yeah.
We had similar design goals with our systems there, so it's really interesting to see the approach we've both taken. But yeah, having something like that where it's like, if you need help coming up with what's the next scene going to be, there can be some prompts, and I don't know, it could be categorized in if it's like social based, or I don't know how you might categorize them, but working backwards from there, that one was like common ground, and then it's like, okay, which two characters do we want to figure out who has common ground, or
exactly. But
as
that, like, because we were setting the scene, like, we knew who we wanted to be there and everything, but then I wasn't sure what the next step was. So I do like that. I imagine a lot of the game will be roll tables like that for a little inspirational thing when you just need that extra part. That's the funny thing, is even knowing that, I had a hard time identifying those times while I played where it would be really cool to go, oh, you know what, I should. I like, because there are, even in the Dragongrin book, there's like a roll table of themes. Even stuff like that would have been very helpful. So I think having those types of things at your fingertips, and to be able to create your own, where it's like, you're going into a specific place, I'm going to write a few specific scenes that could happen here, and I'm gonna pick a random one, and I don't know, it just creates a situation where once you give that inspiration, the game is saying, okay, well, now knowing that how many people are in the scene and where we are and what's going on and this one thing, what is the scene about? And we find the Crucian thing, like you said, the working backward. I just love that idea, because all I've done is said, hey guys, that's what we're gonna do. I know it sounds funny, but for so long I've like worked on a game, and finally I realized, I just need to explain to people how I want to create with them. We'll get to the rules later. You know what I mean? We'll get to resolution mechanics and all that, but I'm like, no. How do I make it so that you say the coolest thing you can do and don't stop yourself? And you don't worry about what your ability is. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess if you take all that stuff out, nobody can. It's like the purest representation. It's a little too far down the spectrum almost, but I don't know. It felt really interesting to run, and I hope it was enjoyable. But it also didn't feel like running a game, which is the part that scares me. You know what I mean? I just talked to you guys for a while. Because I'm like, well, it's like...
Why is that so scary?
What I mean to say is, like, because that can't be all it is. It's not scary. It's almost like, well, there must be something I'm missing here, because all I did was tell you cool stuff from the book. You know what I mean? And I'm like, well, if it's that simple, that's good news. But it's really interesting. Yeah. Was there...
suppose...
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
I was going to say, I suppose it depends, like... we had there's talking about shared references, like we had a lot of buy-in, like we all already had pre-agreed that we're using this particular setting, Dragongrin, and we all have the source material and the reference material.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing there. I guess in terms of if you're intending to sort of publish this at some point, then it's like, how much do you have to account for that, or give guidelines on that, if people are coming up with their own, if you're starting from just nothing, and then it's like, we could have had that similar adventure there in like instead of Dragongrin, or could have been like started from the seed of, all right, something Pirates of the Caribbean-esque, and then so I guess a big part of it is shared references, whether it's existing IP like Dragongrin or Pirates of the Caribbean, or if it's more loose and it's like, let's just have like let's have some kind of pirate adventure and then go from there, So I guess that's the thing, because then it's about the social contract, right? Like and finding sort of the edges of that, and like what is appropriate and what's not, in terms of, if it's like we're starting from scratch and it's like no existing IP, let's just have a fun little pirate adventure, and then it's like, I guess then maybe it's like about finding what everyone wants, and so maybe about having, like in Microscope, how they have the palette where people sort of
Okay,
say
yeah.
what they do or don't want to see in the thing. Might be like go around and everyone gets to suggest things that they do or don't want to see. And that could be whether it's an established IP or not. So with Dragongrin, it might be, all right, one of my like, this is off the palette. Might be like the bleak, for whatever reason. I'm like, I don't want the bleak to be involved this time. I feel like I've explored that a lot recently or something like that. Anyway.
No, I really like that, because the way I imagine that working especially is, we did use Dragongrin, but I have an idea of like how to do it, in a sort of science fiction world, that nobody knows about, that doesn't exist, right? That's not an existing IP that nobody will have shared references for. But the idea is to use this game as a way to get you onto that page. And so I did try it in Dragongrin, and that was helpful. But my goal would be, there is an iteration where people play it starting from scratch and do what you said, more like the rules of the way the rules of like Fate are written. There's also what I imagine, which is I have a set of things that is going to happen to you in Dragongrin. You also, like right now, and it would be the same. There would be like quests that I want to see you complete on, it's called Cloud 14 Station. It's a pleasure station orbiting, geosynchronous orbit, I think. And in that place, in describing your character and going through, there would be more things for you to choose from, and that would be what is part of what's published, is all the different character identities, where it would be like if Dragongrin was a book made to play this game. There would be a part where you go to, and some of the things you're describing, like, oh, well, this would be how to make a scene. This is your set of generators for types of scenes. And because of the world you're playing in, those are different. So you can immediately see how, if we have a set of those, you could make your own, and people could make their own at home. And what you make of that is essentially what you're describing. You're making your palette. You can say, hey, I want this in it, I don't want that in it. You're almost, at the beginning of the game, you are all beginning to create a shared reference. The shared reference of the game you're playing, which makes it this brand new thing for all of you. That's the goal, at least, is to make it so that you all realize better than anyone outside of you what the shared reference is, and what you can say and what does fit. It's almost like the game is to stay on tone, and to say things that do make sense, and to not go too crazy or go too far out one way or another. And if you do, it's up to the other players to still somehow make that fit within the tone. You know what I mean? It's not even that that's wrong. So I did want to look at the chat because people were saying stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Matthew's got some great thoughts in there. But just quickly, while we're on that thought there, I think I've lost it.
I know. I'm sorry,
okay.
I distracted you, but
No, you're right.
I know. Well, do you want to reply to Matthew first? Do you have any?
I'm so sorry to have taken that from Kiel, because I watched it
No,
fly
no, no,
away from
you're
him.
right.
You watched the thought just.
What was it that you were saying? What was it that you were saying? Just
So
before?
I was talking about, because that's a really hard question for me too. Maybe Cassie remembers. I was talking about how, that people could make their own, and you're making the shared reference of the game itself. So the point is to, like, at the beginning,
I remember. Thank you. It was that you said, because you're talking about, like, is this a game or not? And it's, I think you hit the nail on the head, where it's like, this is like in its current state is like a framework for collaborative storytelling. But the game part, like you said, is staying on tone, or is staying in parameter, and
to
that
win
resonates with me.
Exactly.
Like the game is like working together to tell the story, which is what all role-playing games are, I guess, in a sense. But this is.
But none of them are written that way. That's what's so funny. None of them say that. We just say that about them. And
So maybe exactly. marketing it, really emphasizing that it's a collaborative thing from the very get-go, is makes it different.
That's what's funny, is the little secret thing that I'm kind of not making clear is, or like being cagey about, is the idea that I don't ever see releasing this as a game. I see this being a thing that is in it going, when asked how to play a game, this is what we're doing. Here are also the mechanics. You have an ability, and you have a ray gun that does D3 damage, and you can jump 100 feet, like whatever. But at the base of it, when you're not jumping 100 feet mechanically, this is what you're doing to create the story. You know what I mean? And like to some degree, stripping it all away to go, okay, well, what is the best way to create it, to tell a collaborative story? And then go, okay, now, yeah, let's build stuff on top of that. It might be a really good thing that it didn't feel like playing D&D to me, or running a session, because it's what I always wanted it to be. It was so effortless. Not that it was perfect, not that I couldn't have done better or things couldn't have been different, but it seemed cool, and all I had to do was say cool stuff, you know? I'm still struggling with that a little bit. But let's say what Hellmage Matthew says. I think it might be a time thing. This was earlier when I was talking about something. This was a pretty short session in terms of playtime, and there wasn't really time to spill a big old tin of plot thickener. So I do agree with that. I feel like we were just getting into it. I have a really interesting, fun idea of what I think should happen. But equally, I was afraid to rush that. And I did think we could do it in 2 hours, but I always forget, like, how that works. It's funny. I knew that I would both not have enough time and would have plenty. Like, once you're in it, it's like, it's just so different. So I do agree that, like, we didn't really hit our stride. I feel like if we were to do this a few times and I got more used to it and the players got more used to it, we would hit this really good clip of, like, a lot of cool stuff happening over and over. Or like, the story progressing a lot, not even necessarily just cool stuff happening.
We did talk a lot about, like, other stuff. I'm also... Yeah. I don't think we asked you enough questions. Like,
I agree with that, but I also didn't give you guys anything really. I didn't tell you to do so I think that's fair. But what were you saying?
I think you emphasize it a little bit, but maybe it's just me, because I get to talk to James about this a lot, where it's important to ask questions, because as far as Brooke's scene, I'm just focusing on that one for now, facing the creature, maybe having him ask, well, what does it look like around here? To get an idea that, okay, there's the cages, but we found out through details later, but maybe setting the scene, pointing out those tools, if you had them in mind at the time, like stuff like that. So that way, as a character, he can look at the problem and be like, okay, I'm just going to grab.
Yeah, exactly. And to some
like
degree,
that.
That's exactly what I'd like to see happen. And this is doing what I did today is exploring how to make somebody do that. It's really difficult to make somebody do that. I don't understand, like, and not that I really tried really hard, but the goal is to do exactly what you said, which is to go, okay, so I want to tell you, there's this creature, it's in the bottom holds of the ship, it's attacking somebody, and if you don't ask me a question, I assume you have it in your head.
Right.
But I agree, what I want in every case is for somebody, if you're a Beastmaster, to ask me a question like, well, where would my Beastkeeper stuff be? Oh, well, it might be in your bag, but you know what? There might be some implements near the cage. Where it's like, to ask me where they would be is to say, hey, I need those. I want to use them in the scene. And it is what I want. At some point, or another good example is when Tim did the hack, right? He said, I say something that does this thing. That is what we do in most role-playing games, and we leave it at that. But that's another example where I'm like, but the game is exploring what that could be. Because what I want is to be able to walk away and go, in my Dragongrin, Crucian spar by telling these, barbed parables to each other that are like underhanded insults. That is the story I want to tell, but we didn't quite get there. And we did finally, you know what I mean? But like with Tim just saying, I say something really clever, I make a joke to the whole bar was the other example. I want us to walk away from the session saying, I told the joke in the bar and it was about that time in Lightfall when this crazy thing happened. Where, like, through playing, we eventually do find out, but that we write it down so we don't forget. And that's where the quest log comes in the other part. So, I don't remember where I was going with that.
That's okay. I did want to mention I really like the quest log, especially having a group one, because then we have a rough idea of what everybody wants to do, and you can still have secret objectives if you want.
Yeah.
Secret quests. Like maybe on the fly, maybe Saldina has actually been conscripted to steal this red scroll from Pain at some point. Like that could be looped in somewhere else. Why would you really have a partner as a crow? Like
right, and that's what's so fun is we answer those questions. We say, why would a crow have a partner? Well, and honestly, that's what's funny. A lot of the things I thought I would have to work harder to set up, the players, you made it so easy for me to do the things I want to do later, right? I don't know if we'll continue. Maybe I'll talk to Cassie about what I expected to have happen. Maybe we'll continue it one day. But the idea is that I was trying to get a specific set of things to make sense, and you all were making it so easy. Because you were saying, well, what if it could be this? And I go, well, that fits exactly into what I need it to be. You saying it's going to be that kind of creature is perfect for what I need, because I can use that later as a reason for this, this, and this, you know? Where to give the players the freedom to add anything they want, to some degree within it, right? One of you could have said, there's not a bleak storm anymore. But you didn't, and that wouldn't make sense. Like, that's not... You know what I mean? Like, there is a boundary, but it's just for the GM to go, well, no, you don't get that much, you know, that much say. But anything else would go. You could say suddenly that you're a Spellblood and you're doing something, because I'm like, well, I want to see what a Spellblood does in a Bleak Storm. I don't care how powerful it makes you or what it can mean that you do later. We'll come up with other conflicts for you. You know what I mean? Superman, there's enough Superman comics to tell me that it doesn't matter how powerful you are, somebody's got a conflict for you. You know? Yeah. So it's just like, so much of it feels like breaking down what people are used to happening in games. Which is a weird thing, where it's like, people just have an idea of what is supposed to happen, and now I have to tell them something different. And I don't know. That's just an interesting thing to fight. Hellmage did also say, I feel like things could get more meaty and convoluted. As the system becomes more familiar, you can get like plots and schemes and what if X is a traitor. So I imagine fully, and I can, you know, talk about this to both of you, that one of you is going to betray the other, the Missive Crows. Because we just immediately started that you're rivals, the way Cassie talked to you, and we ended up setting up your first scene because you decided just randomly that you served the Dismembered Lord. You wanted to see that in the story, and so we put it in the story, you know? Immediately I thought, okay, it's not the dynamic I thought. They already have an adversarial thing. It's going to come up. And that's what I'm excited about, is that sometimes you're afraid for your players, you know, that, oh, I don't want them to argue, or I, you know, in movies and TV, a lot players or characters will argue or say, I don't want to do something, and they'll do it anyway. But they still got to just express the disinterest. And like, that's kind of the game I want, where you go, no, I'm not doing this with you, and the next scene is you doing it with them. You get both, you know?
Maybe, like, most people, especially myself, passive, IRL, like, these games, this is where I want conflict to happen, because it's a safe space. I get to play Saldina. Who cares? Like, yeah, give me that conflict.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think having a rivalry is good. Like, being buddy, which I've listened to some podcasts, you know, playing, is usually a lot of fun, but there's not enough rivalries out there.
yeah. I do really like characters that can constantly bicker. Bicker is the best way to put it, because they're not friends. They keep doing things together, but they're still like, their dynamic is not to say nice, mushy things to each other. You know, I don't know how else to say that. Yeah. So I have some really cool things that I'm curious to see happen. I still need to work a little more on deciding when my plot stuff happens to you. Because usually what I want to happen is when it's kind of petering out. There were a few times where you were in a scene and it was like there was no reason for it anymore. But then I realized we didn't talk about scene reasons, you know, beforehand, of like, okay, what are you trying to resolve in this? So much of what I realized is what I had in mind, I didn't implement correctly. And still, it was a lot of fun, and it was really cool, and I think it went great. Yeah, Cassie.
I was thinking, like, could you two maybe instigate a scene, perhaps while they're eating at their little table, right? Fish stew, what have you. Could you, as the GM, just say, like, Saldina, you feel a little anxious. You wonder who that person is sitting across from you, this other Crucian. Do you say anything? Like, maybe a prompt like that, it does take over the emotion and feeling of a character, but why not have a gut feeling and then try and use that to help push characters to actually interact where they haven't before?
Yeah. I think one of the major themes of the game kind of became slowing everything down. And I feel like I still didn't do it enough. Where that's a good point is another thing I did occasionally, but not quite enough, was asked how somebody was feeling as a result of something. I didn't quite get the responses I was hoping for from those necessarily, but I think because I didn't focus enough and say, no, like, let's talk about how this relates to something that happened to you a long time ago. You know, like, so... Yeah, I don't know. I really like that, and I think a lot of the... Tim mentioned structure as well, you know, having more structure and different things like that. I think a little bit more of that even for me, and... Yeah, I don't know. I worried a little bit too much about the characters where we didn't exactly do what I was supposed to do and we didn't do the scenes. And but I think having a little more guidelines as to what scenes to set up and who's going to be in them, and having that freedom to really make it clear that you're supposed to add stuff and then we have a cool scene. I still think we didn't even get there yet, and it was still a lot of fun.
I wonder if it would be helpful to look at like the diagram of like the classic story arc and be like, we need at least 3 or 4 scenes. The introduction, the one where they're being asked to finally go on their adventure, and then the critical point, oh dang, the voicelings are getting out of the box. Like
yeah, and in Story D6,
Yeah.
what Kiel had, it dealt a lot more with narrative structure. For me, I think that will map more to the quests than anything, because I think that it will create somewhat neat little arcs, and that has to do with preparing the quests. But I do realize, a lot of what I didn't do was ask you guys more questions and make it clear. I could potentially sort of almost sense some reticence to say details, and that is the part I wasn't sure about. Like, how do I make it clear to you to make stuff up?
So you could have it as I don't know if loaded question's the right word, but you instead of like, how does this make you feel? You can load it up a bit more by saying like, this reminds you of the time that something specific, this certain type of thing happened to you, or like it reminds you of something about your home or whatever. Like you can pick a thing, like even a little bit more specific than like, this reminds you of a similar situation you've been in the past. I mean,
Right.
maybe even that's good enough, but just
maybe you've been in a bleach storm
leading
before.
questions. That's the one, leading, not
Leading questions. Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Exactly. And again, coming from something that's prepared, even being able to roll and say, oh, common ground. That's a bad one. That's our example. But the point being, like, having the ability to inspire that sort of thing as well. To say, hey, there's something about this that you remember, But I didn't consider that. Like, it's funny, a lot of what needs to change about the game is how it's GM'd. And that's not bad.
Which is
it's
it's guidelines for it or whatever.
Yeah. But like that, where I'm
even-
like, I should have done a lot of things differently. Sorry, go ahead, yeah.
Oh no, sorry, I was interrupting you. But even with that one, just thinking in that same kind of situation, like I'm thinking of the scene where I think where we ended up having that crucian discussion, which was where we were eating, sitting around eating. Like a leading question, even instead of being one that's sort of focused on something from my character's past or whatever, it could even be like, what's the thing about what's concerning you most about the situation you're in right now with the ship, because then for me, it's like, if we already have those hooks of like, for me, it would be like, all right, is it, am I going to be able to deliver this scroll? Is it like Saldina's acting more weird than usual? Is it, I don't like, and this one's, I don't like sailing. Usually I travel by other means, because then I'm looking for something, and it's like, all right, what hooks do I have to latch onto there, or can I come up with a new one, or like, is it like, and what I ended up doing was the cargo downstairs, it was like,
that's the concern.
Didn't necessarily get portrayed as that's what's concerning me. I ended up using it as a leverage against Brooks, but just those kind of prompts, which sort of loops back into things you've already said. It's like, all right, we've got all these pieces on the board. Which one do you want to focus on now? But just phrasing that in a certain way.
Yeah. I think it's that phrasing, because between that and saying, okay, well, you have your goals, you have your quests you want to complete. So to some degree, as you pointed out, well, part of what you're concerned about is not completing your quest, delivering the missive, And I think, even like you said, even just that, all of you writing down anything about your character seemed to immediately make you care and be interested. And that's what's interesting, is I want to find ways to make it more clear that our goal here is to learn more about them, and that's the game. But I think that's very helpful, is like prompts for people and to lead them as the GM, basically in every scene. What were you going to say, Cassie?
Oh crap.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it seemed like
Right,
that's
I
what
did
you said.
actually have a thought, and then I just let it go because I was like, it's not that relevant.
Okay.
It's okay.
Well, and I figure we will wrap up here soon. This was amazing fun. It was really cool just to run a game in Dragongrin. Like, really, it was like a really good excuse to just play some D&D, or D&D, whatever. Play some games with my friends, I should say. I'm so used to saying D&D. And yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that was really cool. Thank you so much for being here. And
Thanks for getting up so early, Kiel.
yes,
no worries.
It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Yeah, I'm so glad.
I love this system, how it's shaping up. Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear it. It's it's really cool to hear that about something that I've created, especially something that is as right now ephemeral as this. So it helps me pin it down a little more. So yeah, I guess I don't know. We can do outros. We are still live. How about you, Kiel?
Yeah, thanks again for having me. I'm really excited to see see this continue to develop and continue being involved if I can.
Absolutely.
Play testing and whatever else. Stoked. Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye, everyone. Thanks for hanging out.
Yes,
Great to see you both as well.
In here. What about you, Cassie?
Let's see. I forgot to mention Instagram. I have at Redfen Draws. I haven't posted anything in a while, but art every once in a while. It's there. I'm mostly off screen talking to James about this stuff, but I definitely look forward to doing another one of these because I want to keep playing with my character. So yeah, I'm down to do another for sure.
Awesome. Very glad to hear that, because that's always exciting too, that you want to know what's happening, you want to flesh out your character. All very heartening things to hear, about the game. Yes, thank you everybody for joining us. As a few people mentioned throughout the stream, it's been a while for Tabletop Terror, certainly for a live stream, and especially for a live play. I think Tim ran something recently, but it's still very few and far between. We're trying to change that a little bit. So yeah, here's one of a lot of those. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we will talk to you next time.